Chapter 203. Zhou Xian looked at Yi Qingtang with a smile. There seemed to not be any evil intentions on his face, but there was a vicious look in his smiling eyes. He leaned forward slightly and whispered into Yi Qingtang's ears. Previously, junior sister Yi received 3 moves from my brother, Zhou Chu, on the arena, and I thought that you must be very skilled. Wouldn't it be a pity if you went on normal missions? Thus, this time. I hope that junior sister Yi will really put your best performance in the mission. Zhou Xian smiled very kindly, but every word he said emitted a frightening sense of danger. Yi Qingtang scoffed in her heard, though she did not show any expressions on her face. Please take care of me, senior brother Zhou. Zhou Xian laughed. Of course. Then he stood straight and said, I still have some matters to settle. I will take a leave first. Then, Zhou Xian turned around and left after bidding the warden goodbye. From the start to the end, Zhou Xian did not mention anything regarding the mission to Yi Qingtang. All the missions were fixed, and each team needed to discuss the contents of the mission by themselves. Yun Shu was originally worried about Yi Qingtang and wanted to check on her but was held back by Su Wan, who used the reason that they had to discuss the mission. Yi Qingtang smiled faintly as she looked at how everyone was gathered together. Then, she left and mentally prepared for Zhou Xian's accident. But before Yi Qingtang returned to her room, she saw Qin Huan standing outside the dorm with an anxious expression. The moment Qin Huan saw Yi Qingtang, he hurriedly ran up to her. Junior sister Yi, there's something I need to tell you. Be careful these few days, someone wants to harm you, Qin Huan said hurriedly. Yi Qingtang replied, Are you talking about Zhou Xian? Qin Huan was taken aback. How do you know? That Zhou Xian is Zhou Chu's older brother. He might already know that you injured Zhou Chu the other time. When I was taking on a mission earlier, I heard that Zhou Xian seemed to have looked for your teaching warden to add you into his sect mission. You must be careful. Zhou Xian is not like Zhou Chu. He is extremely insidious. Yi Qingtang laughed. He has already looked for me, and the warden had placed me in his team as well. In a few days, I will have to go on a mission together with him. Qin Huan was stunned when he heard Yi Qingtang. His expression changed, and he muttered a curse. I knew that bastard Zhou Xian was sinister. I didn't think that he would take action so quickly. You must be more careful. Zhou Xian has many means and tricks. He does not dare to do anything to you in the sect, but using this mission, he will definitely not let you off easily. I think, how about you find an excuse to reject this mission? Qin Huan could not help but be worried about Yi Qingtang. In the outer sect, Zhou Xian's abilities were not considered weak. Although Qin Huan knew that Yi Qingtang was skilled, it was still too much danger for Yi Qingtang to go on a mission together with such an insidious person like Zhou Xian. How can a sect mission be rejected? Yi Qingtang replied. Qin Huan's shoulders slumped down immediately. Sect missions were missions that must be done. After being appointed a sect mission, one must proceed to complete it, and there was simply no way of rejecting it. How about? I'll ask senior brother Gu to talk to Zhou Xian. Qin Huan suggested. Gu Yanqiu had some status amongst the outer sect disciples, and, perhaps, he might be able to restrain Zhou Xian. I'll go look for senior brother Gu now. Don't worry, junior sister Yi. Then, he immediately turned around and sprinted away without waiting for Yi Qingtang's reply. Chapter 204. Yi Qingtang saw how Qin Huan ran away so quickly and was at a loss of whether to cry or laugh. If Zhou Xian was so easy to persuade, Gu Yanqiu would have gone to settle the matter right when he heard the news. Yi Qingtang could not stop Qin Huan and could only let him go. Yi Qingtang more or less knew what Zhou Xian was thinking of. There were often deaths when disciples were out on missions. Even if they accidentally lost their lives in a battle, the sect would not investigate too deeply into what happened. Yi Qingtang returned to the room with that thought. It was rare that Lin Long was also in the room today. Yi Qingtang nodded at Lin Long. She saw her and then looked at the silver wolf which was sitting below the window. When the wolf met Yi Qingtang's eyes, something seemed to flash across its green orbs, and it immediately turned away before Yi Qingtang sensed it. Yi Qingtang always felt that her little baby was too shy. Every time she massaged it, it always fell out with her. She was about to caress the wolf, but Lin Long, who had always been silent, suddenly called Yi Qingtang. "Junior sister Yi." A rather aloof female voice sounded from behind Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang stopped in her tracks and looked at Lin Long, who suddenly said something. "Senior sister Lin. Is there anything?" Yi Qingtang usually did not spend a long time in the dorm, and even if she returned, she was mostly with the silver wolf. Lin Long had an aloof personality, and the two of them did not really interact with each other. The only time they talked was the day when Yi Qingtang just moved into the dorm. Lin Long had an indifferent look on her face. She stood up from her table and placed a file in Yi Qingtang's hands. Yi Qingtang looked at Lin Long a little confusedly. When she took a look at the file, she actually realized that it was the file for a sect mission. Why did she suddenly pass her this sect mission file? "Return it back to me before tomorrow." Lin Long returned to her seat and took up a book to read after leaving Yi Qingtang with such an unclear sentence. Yi Qingtang was really at a loss and did not know what was Lin Long trying to do, but she still flipped through the file in her hand. And this surprised her immediately. At the last part of the file, there was a line written clearly: "Participants, Zhou Xian, Lin Long." Yi Qingtang. Apart from these three names, there were two other foreign disciples' names. Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up. Although she was looking at Lin Long's cold side profile, her heart was warm. Lin Long was also in Zhou Xian's sect mission and probably already noticed that something was off, thus, she chose to hand this file to Yi Qingtang. While Yi Qingtang was not afraid of any difficulties that Zhou Xian would make, it was inevitable that she would fall for Zhou Xian's schemes if she did not familiarize herself with the mission contents before going on the mission. Lin Long's move indeed resolved Yi Qingtang's urgent worries. Yi Qingtang's grip on the file tightened as she spoke to Lin Long gently. "Thank you, senior sister Lin." Lin Long looked at Yi Qingtang without emotion and responded with an almost unnoticeable nod. Then, she returned her focus on the book in her hand. Yi Qingtang immediately walked to her table with a file in her hand without forgetting to pinch the wolf's ears, which caused the wolf to shoot an annoyed glare at her. Yi Qingtang chuckled after having her way and then focused on the mission file. The mission which the sect appointed to Zhou Xian and the rest was to investigate the tragic case of the extermination of a family. Chapter 205. Every sect had many powerful forces which depended on them. These forces offered worships to the sect regularly, and the sect would give them protection. For the mission that Yi Qingtang and the rest were going on this time, they were to go to a mountain village which was under Xianling sect's protection, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had attached itself to Xianling sect for a long time, and it had certain fame. It was considered a pretty good family clan. However, it was met with an unexpected calamity a month ago. In just a night, all 360 people in the village were murdered, and there was no clue left behind by the murderer. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village worshipped Xianling sect, and normal forces did not dare to massacre everyone in it. Now that the entire village was massacred within a night, it was as good as a slap in Xianling sect's face. Thus, Xianling sect had to send disciples to investigate the tragic case. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. In her previous life, there was a hubbub about Spirit Condensation Mountain Village incident as well, but she had never heard that the killer was found. It was definitely not one man's doing to be able to massacre over 300 people in a night. Yi Qingtang read through the file detailedly and realized that the clues given were very vague. Apart from the information of the village master's family, there were simply no leads in this tragedy. Yi Qingtang memorized all the information on the file and returned it to Lin Long. When Lin Long received the file back, she was a little surprised as she looked up at Yi Qingtang with a little suspicion. Yi Qingtang already finished looking through it in such a short time. Have you finished looking through it? Lin Long could not help but ask. Yi Qingtang nodded. Lin Long did not say anything further and kept the file as though nothing happened at all, and she looked down at the book in her hand. Yi Qingtang knew that Lin Long was cold on the outside but warm on the inside and was unwilling to disturb her. Thus, she went back to her area. All the disciples' missions were already allocated, and what was left was for them to make preparations. The new disciples were rather nervous since it was their first time to do a mission, and, thus, they discussed for a long time. On Yi Qingtang's side, Lin Long did not like talking, and it was even more impossible for Zhou Xian to tell her anything. Hence, she was very free, and she took out a floating pagoda to nourish her spirit root. It had been a month since she entered the sect, and she clearly felt that her spirit root seemed to have become stronger. During the sect assessment, her spirit root had traces of making a breakthrough to an orange spirit root. In this 1 month, she already felt that her spirit root had gone through drastic changes quietly. Using the time when no one noticed, Yi Qingtang turned around and revealed the spirit root in her palm. A light shone. At that instant, the spirit root in her palm was covered by a large patch of orange, and there was only a tiny trace of red at the tip of the spirit root. Yi Qingtang saw that the spirit root was about to be upgraded to an orange color, and happiness filled her heart. She closed her hands, and the image of the spirit root faded away. A steadfast expression emerged in her smiling eyes. The sect was surging with spirit energy, and the rate of growth of her spirit root here was way faster than that when she was in Lin Town. In at most half a month, she was very certain that she could raise her spirit root to an orange spirit root. Yi Qingtang's eyes twinkled. She, who was focused on upgrading her spirit root, did not notice that when she revealed her spirit root just now, the silver wolf in the corner was watching everything. When it saw that the color of Yi Qingtang's spirit root was about to turn orange, a light flashed across its eyes silently. Chapter 206, The night was silent. The faint moonlight entered from the window and was cast on the silver wolf's body. In the silence, the silver wolf quietly stood up, and its slender limbs allowed it to jump up onto the bed easily. Its deep eyes landed on Yi Qingtang's face. A small black ball of fog emerged out from Yi Qingtang's chest. It wriggled a little out from the fluffy blanket and looked agitatedly at the mighty wolf above it. "Would-be father, have you finally come round? Are you finally going to sneak an attack on mother in the middle of the night?" The little black ball was so excited that its voice trembled unconsciously. It had already been some time since its would-be father came to its mother's side. However, the wolf just remained at a side without saying anything the whole day and completely did not know how to get closer to its mother, which really worried it. The silver wolf swept a cold glare at the little black ball, which immediately hid in Yi Qingtang's arms. "I am saying this all for your own good. Otherwise, when will you be able to have a baby with mother?" mumbled the little black ball softly. The silver wolf's gaze sharpened, but when its eyes landed on Yi Qingtang, the sharpness in its gaze quietly turned into a complicated expression. When it looked at Yi Qingtang's hands, which were lying outside the blanket, its brow was slightly raised. It could not help but recall the image of its body being carelessly touched all over by this pair of hands in the past few days. The silver wolf slightly shook its head and completely cleared that depressing image out of its mind. It slowly raised its paw and placed it on Yi Qingtang's abdomen lightly. A faint light from the silver wolf's paw slowly passed through the blanket and into Yi Qingtang's abdomen. "Oh! Would-be father, is this a special copulation method?" The little black ball secretly peeked out from the blanket, and its eyes were dazzled with stars when it saw the silver wolf's affectionate action. The silver wolf froze as it cast a cold glance at the little black ball that said shocking things, wondering if it should squeeze the little black ball to death with a paw. Perhaps it was because of the fact that the silver wolf stiffened and the strength it exerted changed. Yi Qingtang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She opened her eyes sleepily and looked at the silver wolf standing on its bed with sleep in her eyes. The silver wolf did not expect Yi Qingtang to suddenly wake up and immediately froze. However, don't play around. Tired, Yi Qingtang, who was still drowsy from her sleep, did not even notice what the silver wolf had done to her. Her hands stretched out to hug and press down on the silver wolf's head while her slim legs flipped out from the blanket and laid across the silver wolf's body. With both her hands and legs, she directly hugged the furry silver wolf in her arms and even rubbed her head on the silver wolf's face in extreme satisfaction. Be good, let's sleep. The silver wolf was hugged tightly by Yi Qingtang's octopus-like position. With a slight trace of movement, Yi Qingtang, who was in her sleep, hugged it even more tightly instead. The silver wolf could not do anything. The little black ball still wanted to take a peek but was hit by the silver wolf's paw. The silver wolf looked at Yi Qingtang's sleeping face, which was close at hand, and let out an almost inaudible sigh. It finally closed its eyes, and its body, intentionally or unintentionally, leaned against Yi Qingtang. The little black ball which hid back into the heart of the demon god trembled in excitement. Its would-be father and mother were finally sleeping on the same bed. Mother will be able to have a baby very soon. Haha, so exciting. Chapter 207. The preparation time for a sect mission was very short, and they had to set off the next morning. When Yi Qingtang woke up, she saw that the silver wolf, which was hugged tightly by her, was looking at her with a numb expression. Yi Qingtang was a little shocked. But very quickly, Yi Qingtang returned to her senses and changed her clothes nimbly. And that scene was on full display in front of a certain someone. The silver wolf's lips twitched slightly, and it instinctively looked away, although it acted to look at her carelessly. Too skinny. A little chubbier would be better. Yi Qingtang did not even notice the silver wolf's thoughts and took her things after changing. She patted the silver wolf's head and said, "Wait for me to return obediently. I will ask senior brother Qin to help me feed you." After that, Yi Qingtang left the room without waiting for the silver wolf to react. She did think of bringing the silver wolf on the mission with her, but because this mission was specially prepared for her, Yi Qingtang did not dare to risk bringing the silver wolf. After leaving her dorm, Yi Qingtang only felt that her body was exceptionally light today and that the abdomen area where her spirit root was at was emitting a faint warmth. It was a very interesting feeling. Could it be that the spirit root is about to break through? Yi Qingtang was very curious as well. She obviously felt that she still needed half a month's time, but why was it that her spirit root had traces of a breakthrough after just one night of sleep? Without thinking any more, Yi Qingtang immediately went to look for Qin Huan to ask him to look after the silver wolf on her behalf during this period of time. Afterward, she left the sect. Outside the sect, many teams were already gathered. Some teams had already set off. Yi Qingtang saw Lin Long's figure from a distance away and immediately walked in that direction. "Senior Sister Lin." Yi Qingtang greeted. Lin Long nodded slightly, and her eyes stopped on Yi Qingtang for a while. She had a feeling that the aura around Yi Qingtang was a little different today, but she could not point out the difference at the moment. Right at that instant, Yi Qingtang heard noisy footsteps and a sarcastic voice. "Senior brother Zhou, why must you bring a useless new disciple on this mission? I think that this group of new disciples don't know anything at all. Even if we bring them, they will just be a burden. How about you rethink it?" A disciple who looked about 20 years old was beside Zhou Xian, and he mumbled in dissatisfaction. Zhou Xian came right after. Other than the person who spoke just now, there was another disciple who was appointed this mission beside Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyes quickly landed on Yi Qingtang as though he completely did not notice what the junior brother beside him meant. He said with a smile, "She would require a certain amount of training as a new disciple anyway. Since we are senior brothers, we should take care of her. Moreover, this little junior sister's spirit root is not good. If I don't invite her, other new disciples might not be willing to go on a mission together with a red spirit root." "Red spirit root? It can't be. Those two disciples were shocked and they heard the three words, red spirit root. A new disciple was already useless enough, and it turned out she was still a red spirit root? Was that not the same as a useless piece of trash? Zhou Xian's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was enough for Yi Qingtang and Lin Long to hear clearly. When Zhou Xian finished his sentence, he already appeared in front of Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's lips curled into a sneer. Really, thank you for worrying, senior brother Zhou. Chapter 208. Zhou Xian chuckled. Of course. Since we are from the same sect, I will definitely be worried about you. A cold light thoughtlessly flashed across his eyes when he finished speaking. However, the other two disciples became even more dissatisfied upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Sect missions were different from rewarded missions. If rewarded missions were a failure, the disciples would lose some time at most and would not receive any other punishments. However, if it was a mission appointed by the sect, it had to be completed. Otherwise, the disciples would be reprimanded by the warden and punished correspondingly once they returned to the sect. Thus, participating disciples were exceptionally meticulous when they were doing sect missions as they were feared that a failed mission would negatively affect themselves and the sect. Those two disciples sized up Yi Qingtang. Apart from her beautiful face, they despised everything else about Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Yi, it's been a month since you entered the sect. Have you been cultivating hard? Are you familiar with the basics of the Xiantian swordplay already? A disciple asked meanly. He did not care about Zhou Xian's reasons for adding this new disciple into the team and was only concerned about whether he could complete his mission. The young girl before him looked weak and did not look like she had the ability to complete the mission. Even if such a person followed them, not putting in any effort was the greatest contribution already. If she was a hindrance in their investigation, it would really be a big problem. How could Yi Qingtang not hear the harshness in the person's words? She was very clear that all of this was intentionally created by Zhou Xian. These disciples may not know about Zhou Xian's objectives, but they hated her because of Zhou Xian's words. Even if she had an accidental death in the mission, these two disciples would probably not even ask about it. Yi Qingtang sneered in her heart, and a sharp look flashed across her eyes as she looked at Zhou Xian's face, of which he concealed his mocking expression. I am asking you a question, did you hear me? As a junior sister, how dare you ignore a senior brother's question? Do you have any manners? That disciple who did not hear Yi Qingtang's reply immediately frowned unhappily and instinctively wanted to grab her shoulder. A smile passed by Zhou Xian's eyes when he saw the disciple making things difficult for Yi Qingtang. These two junior brothers were specially selected out from the outer sect by him. They had an arrogant and self-conceited nature. Even if he did not openly do anything to Yi Qingtang would already be troubled just by the two's verbal attacks. However, as that disciple stretched his hand out, Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up. Her eyes were obviously smiling, but the coldness in her eyes caused his hand to freeze in midair. He did not know why either, but he felt as though he fell into an ice cellar when he was stared at by her. Senior brother, you're caring too much. Yi Qingtang scoffed. If you don't want to do the mission, then get lost quickly. Stop wasting time here. Lin Long, who had remained silent all along, suddenly walked up to stand before Yi Qingtang and looked at the troublemaking disciples coldly. That disciple saw Lin Long standing in front of him with a cold expression and was taken aback immediately. Fear flashed across his eyes as he said rather guiltily, Senior Sister Lin. Chapter 209. Lin Long's sudden speech shocked Zhou Xian, who was waiting for the drama to ensue. He stood up and spoke in a tone different from the arrogant one he was using when talking to Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Lin is right. It is time for us to set off now as well. The other teams have already left. If we continue being like this here, we would really waste time. Zhou Xian spoke so righteously, but little did anyone know that everything that happened before was all part of his plan. The only thing that surprised him was that Lin Long, who had always been cold and aloof, suddenly spoke up for Yi Qingtang. Lin Long looked at Zhou Xian coldly and then turned around to walk down the path to heaven. With Lin Long's warning, the other disciples did not dare to waste any more time then and walked down the path to heaven after giving Yi Qingtang an annoyed look. Zhou Xian walked slightly slower. After the three of them were a distance away, he walked past Yi Qingtang and said in a volume that only the two of them could hear, "Yi Qingtang, I remember your kindness for treating my younger brother, Zhou Chu, that way previously." Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes, and her lips tugged up into a seeming smile. "So, that good-for-nothing Zhou Chu is actually senior brother Zhou's younger brother." Once he heard the words, good-for-nothing, Zhou Xian's face darkened immediately. He glared at Yi Qingtang with fury in his eyes. "Good-for-nothing? You are a red spirit root trash. What right do you have to call others good-for-nothing?" Yi Qingtang's smile deepened. She tilted her head as she casually glanced down at the sword hung on Zhou Xian's waist. "What a pity, your younger brother can't even crawl up after being beaten by me, a red spirit root." "You." Zhou Xian's expression changed. Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up, and her clear eyes directly met with Zhou Xian's. "He is clearly a disciple who cultivated for many years in the fist faction but had to lay in bed for days after being beaten by me, a new disciple who just entered the sect for a few days. Senior brother Zhou, in your opinion, how would I dare to snatch the title of being a good-for-nothing from your younger brother?" Zhou Xian's face turned blue. He originally thought that Yi Qingtang would not dare to be too insolent after he established an imposing air for himself. Yet, it was as though this woman's mouth was full of poison, and every sentence she said hit him right in the heart. "Yi Qingtang, the days ahead are long. Don't say that I didn't remind you. There are many dangers in sect missions. You better take good care of yourself." Zhou Xian left her a sentence coldly and walked down the path to heaven, unwilling to waste time talking to Yi Qingtang who had the gift of gab. Yi Qingtang looked at Zhou Xian's back view with a seeming smile and looked down to hide the murderous expression which emerged in her eyes for a second. "Take good care of yourself." Only that, the one who needed to take good care themselves was not her but Zhou Xian. A murderous smile hung on her lips as she walked down the path to heaven casually. How could a devil from hell be offended by an ordinary person as he pleased? At the same time, after Yi Qingtang just left, Qin Huan remembered what Yi Qingtang entrusted him with and prepared a plate full of beef as an offering to the wolf which Yi Qingtang baited. However, once Qin Huan walked into Yi Qingtang's room, he was immediately dumbfounded to see an empty room. There was not a trace of the wolf. Where is the wolf? In a moment, Qin Huan felt as though the sky was going to fall. Yi Qingtang just left, but the silver wolf disappeared already. If Yi Qingtang returned after finishing her mission, wouldn't he? Chapter 210, Qin Huan went berserk. Without caring about the beef in his hands, he sprinted away while screaming. "Senior brother Gu. This is bad. Junior sister Yes wolf disappeared. Help me to find it, please CEE." At the same time, a tall man was pacing up and down the woods at the foot of the cliff below Xianling sect. Worry and anxiety were written all over his face. This Lady Yi. She kidnapped His Highness just like that. How can I rescue His Highness without alarming the Xianling sect? Lady Yi, you are being a bandit, do you know? Mu Su lingered outside Xianling sect for half a month and was about to go insane. There was only one way to the sect, which was the path to heaven. Although he was completely able to fly up to Xianling sect on his own, doing that would definitely alarm everyone in Xianling sect. Mu Su had a special identity, and if he suddenly appeared in Xianling sect, there would be a big stir in Xianling sect. Then, it would take him a lot of effort to find an excuse to deal with those oldies in Xianling sect, much less be able to search for someone. There was no way he could tell the Xianling sect people that the noble and holy palace lord of the Antiquity Palace was forcefully abducted by their outer sect disciple, right? And he was even being abducted in a freaking animal form. If such words spread, all those old elders in Xianling's sect would definitely be shocked. Moreover, if His Highness' identity was exposed, there was no doubt that His Highness would behead him. On one hand, he wanted to bring His Highness back, but on the other, he could not let anyone find out about it. Mu Su was so worried that he dropped a bunch of hair, yet he still had not found a reliable method. Thus, he could only stand around and wait for His Highness to leave Xianling's sect on his own. After all, with His Highness' skill, Xianling's sect's defense and perception were as good as non-existent. However, half a month passed. Mu Su felt that hope was getting increasingly slimmer. Just as Mu Su was weighed down with worry, he suddenly saw a group of Xianling's sect disciples coming down from the path to heaven and was shocked when he saw a familiar face walking past him. Yi Qingtang slowly walked down the path to heaven, got on a horse that was already prepared for them, and left with a few other Xianling sect disciples. Lady Yi has left? Mu Su watched Yi Qingtang leave and trembled in shock as he did not even see a silver wolf by Yi Qingtang's side. Lady Yi abducted His Highness, but why was she going out alone now? Where was His Highness? Your Highness, you must know better. You must not be reluctant to come back after being abducted to be the wife of a bandit chief. Even if you want to woo Lady Yi, you don't have to do it now, Mu Su mumbled perplexedly. Before he finished his sentence, he felt a gush of cold air from behind him. Wife of a bandit chief. A rather low voice suddenly sounded behind Mu Su. Once Mu Su heard that voice, happiness filled him. He turned around and saw Han Sangming, whom he had been away from for a long time, standing behind him in his attractive human form. Mu Su almost burst out crying there and then. Your Highness! You're back! Mu Su wiped a bitter tear away and was only this close from hugging Han Kangming's leg. However, there was a strange look on Han Kangming's face. His cold eyes slowly looked at Mu Su, and he said softly, "What did you say just now?" Chapter 211. With that said, Mu Su's legs suddenly turned jelly. What did he say? He actually said that His Highness was a wife of a bandit chief. And it was even heard by His Highness. There was no way he would get by the days. Your Highness, listen to my explanation. Mu Su really was about to cry as he looked at Han Sangming. Had he known that His Highness would appear at that time, he would definitely not dare to ramble on randomly even if everyone lent him their courage. Your Highness, why did you not appear earlier nor later but right at that time? Did you really not appear to torture me on purpose? Mu Su was still thinking about how to make His Highness pardon him from death, but he noticed that Han Kangming's eyes did not even stay on him at all, they looked right over him and at the little figure which was riding away in the opposite direction. Is His Highness looking at Lady Yi? Mu Su's heart shook. He faintly sensed that the eyes that His Highness were looking at Yi Qingtang with were a little different from their initial coldness. Could it be that, towards Lady Yi, His Highness really developed feelings after spending time together, in this half a month? Your Highness, are you feeling better? Mu Su asked cautiously. Han Sangming turned into animal form previously because of the surge of the aura of the evil. Now that he could return back into a human form, it seemed that there should not be any big problems anymore. It is all right. Han Sangming replied. Mu Su heaved a sigh of relief but did not dare to speak carelessly again, as he was afraid that Han Sangming would behead him once he remembered what he said about being the wife of the bandit chief. On the other side, Yi Qingtang was on their way to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village with Lin Long and the rest. After a long day of traveling, the group stopped their journey as night fell. They lit a fire in a forest by the road and rested. Senior Brother Zhou, the village master of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, is skilled, and there are a large number of highly skilled people in the village protecting the village. How could it disappear just like that? A disciple could not help but question after pondering about the case. Zhou Xian replied. This is hard to say. With over 300 people dying in a night, it was impossible for the surrounding people to not know of such a big commotion. Furthermore, that entire area is under the influence of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. If there was anything, the people outside the mountain village would definitely not sit still and do nothing. However, the report to the sect did not mention this. I think, perhaps the other party might have poisoned them in secret. Over 300 people were killed in a night in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and it could be said that the amount of blood within the village could form a river. Yet, no one outside the sect realized it, and this was a little strange. People nearby Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had investigated the matter before as well, but there was still no clue. Hence, they had no choice but to request Xianling sect for help. Could it be a vendetta? Can't be sure. Zhou Xian and the two other disciples chatted by the fire. Lin Long had a quiet personality, and, thus, she only sat at a side while reading the file without saying anything at all. And because of what Zhou Xian deliberately said previously, the other two disciples disliked Yi Qingtang. On the journey, they were unwilling to speak to Yi Qingtang and treated her as though she did not exist. During the conversation, Zhou Xian purposely looked up casually at Yi Qingtang, who made her own fire, and his lips formed into a sneer. Yi Qingtang, cherish your limited days left. Once we reach Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, I will bury you together with those 300 dead souls in the village. Chapter 212. On the journey, Zhou Xian made things difficult for Yi Qingtang both covertly and overtly but never really attacked her. He merely used words to lead the two disciples who were dissatisfied with Yi Qingtang's spirit root to give Yi Qingtang some attitude, although she completely ignored their sarcastic and discriminating gazes. Very obviously, Zhou Xian did not plan to attack Yi Qingtang on the road. Although they left Xianling's sect, killing off a fellow disciple would require a safe and sound opportunity. Zhou Xian was not willing to let others have something on him. Thus, his target had been locked on the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village from the very start. There was the main field for him to deal with Yi Qingtang. After an arduous journey, the 5 people finally reached Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Plants were flattened on a tall mountain, and there were houses situated from the foot of the mountain all the way to the peak. This entire mountain was under Spirit Condensation Mountain Village's possession, and everyone who resided there was a part of forces affiliated to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. With one look, one could see that there were hundreds of families living there. Yi Qingtang and the rest had just reached the foot of the mountain, but their Xianling sect uniform attracted the attention of the people nearby the mountain village. In no time, an old man and a handsome young man approached them quickly. Sorry for not coming ahead to welcome you as we were unaware of your arrival. Do pardon us. That elderly lifted his clothes and knelt before the 5 teenagers on horses without caring about seniority. The young man beside the elderly immediately followed the elderly and knelt with his head hung low as well. Similarly, the surrounding citizens knelt down earnestly in awe and respect on both sides of the Xianling sect disciples. The reverence of a sect was simply not what a normal person could offend. In the eyes of ordinary citizens, those who entered a sect were mighty figures standing on top of the clouds, holy and could not be infringed. Zhou Xian and the rest had been in the sect for a long time and were already used to such a grand greeting. This was how noble a sect disciple was in the eyes of normal people. Moreover, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was originally reliant on Xianling's sect, and, thus, the people were even more reverent towards them. Rise. We are ordered here to investigate the tragedy in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Which of you is the current person in charge? Zhou Xian, who was sitting on a horse, glanced across the group of people before him. That old man slowly rose and stepped forward. I was originally the apothecary of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village and am considered the person in charge of this place right now. This is, he raised his hand and pointed to the silent young man beside him. This is the adopted stepson of the village master, Wu Zheng. We have been waiting for you all for a long time. Please do us, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, justice. Of course. Zhou Xian replied proudly. You all must be worn out from the journey. We have already prepared food and drinks. You all can dismount and rest for a while understanding the situation here, the apothecary said respectfully. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. After exchanging a look with the other disciples, he immediately dismounted and headed to their destination with the company of the apothecary and Wu Zheng. Yi Qingtang walked beside Lin Long at the tail of the team and looked at the surrounding citizens' faces casually. Perhaps it was because a bloody massacre happened, fear and uneasiness were prevalent in the citizens' eyes, though they faked a calm front. Only after they saw Yi Qingtang and the others did that look of uneasiness fade away slowly, though their ash-pale faces were enough to prove the trepidation they felt over the past few days. Chapter 212. 1. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 2. The apothecary brought the 5 of them to their destination. The uneasy citizens lingered outside the door and were not willing to leave. Their fear seemed to finally dissipate only when they were standing close to these sect disciples. What exactly happened to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Zhou Xian questioned straight to the point after sitting down. Although he wanted to make use of this chance to get rid of Yi Qingtang, he did not forget the mission he was tasked to as well. Otherwise, even if he killed Yi Qingtang, he would still be punished by the sect should he not complete the mission. Furthermore, he did not think that killing Yi Qingtang would be difficult. After hearing the question, the apothecary could not help but sigh heavily. This is a long story. That day was our village master's 50th birthday celebration. There were many guests that night, and the celebration finally ended at midnight. After a whole day of labor, everyone was tired by nighttime and went to rest after sending the guests off. However, no one would have thought that an accident happened that very night. Yi Qingtang listened from aside quietly. What the apothecary said was the same as the information mentioned in the sect file, and there were no special clues. Can you bring us to look at the situation in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village first? Zhou Xian wanted to continue questioning, yet Yi Qingtang suddenly requested to take a look at the scene of the accident. He frowned displeasingly, but on second thought, they had to inspect the scene as well. Thus, he did not say anything. The apothecary replied. Sure. We did not dare to touch anything in the mountain village so that you all can inspect the scene closely when you all are here. Then, the apothecary stood up and led the group towards Spirit Condensation Mountain Village along with Wu Zheng. Zhou Xian and the other 2 disciples took a step first and walked at the front. Rather, it was Lin Long who, intentionally or unintentionally, walked at a speed which coincidentally matched with Yi Qingtang's pace and was walking right beside Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang had noticed this long ago when they were still on the road. Senior sister Lin always instinctively maintained the same pace as her, and even if they were in a hurry, senior sister Lin was never too far away from her. Although Yi Qingtang did not talk much to this cold senior sister during the journey, Yi Qingtang noticed Lin Long's subtle actions. Yi Qingtang had a feeling that Lin Long seemed to have sensed that Zhou Xian was going to harm Yi Qingtang, which caused her to keep maintaining a close distance with her on purpose. To this, Yi Qingtang felt an inexpressible warmth. In her previous life, Lin Long was also like this. She didn't talk much normally and had a detached personality but would lend a hand at critical times. As she pondered, they had already reached the main entrance of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Before entering the door to the mountain village, they saw large patches of blood flowing out from under the door. The blood had already dried, but the strong blood smell traveled into their noses along with the wind. Contrasting against the black door, the blood which seeped under the door was like a giant tongue of a demon. This is it. However, please be mentally prepared. The situation inside is not too good, reminded the apothecary before he opened the door. Zhou Xian frowned a little, obviously not putting the apothecary's words to heart. It was merely a bloody scene, he had gone on many missions before. How would he have seen little of such situations? Open the door, Zhou Xian said. Chapter 212. 2. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 3. The apothecary hesitated for a moment and finally nodded at Wu Zheng beside him. Wu Zheng went forward quietly and pushed open the tightly shut door. The moment the door was pushed open, a strong blood smell greeted them. The smell was so intense that one could faint from it. The scene inside made the calm Zhou Xian shudder and breathe with difficulty. Hundreds of heads were piled in the courtyard of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village like a tower of skulls. Crimson dried blood hardened on the almost decomposed skulls. Over 300 skulls were piled in the courtyard so glaringly. Crimson blood covered the entire courtyard as though a demonic blood-colored flower was in full bloom, while the hundreds of skulls formed the core of the flower of death. Along with the intense smell of death in the air, the image was imprinted in everyone's eyes. In an instant, Zhou Xian and the rest turned pale. Even if he knew that Spirit Condensation Mountain Village would be gory, he did not expect that skulls would be piled up like mountains. On the decomposed skulls, worms were crawling around inside the rotten flesh, while eyeballs that were left half-eaten by crows hung in the eye sockets as though they were still looking at the group at the door. It was freaky and twisted. The mixture of the rotting smell and blood smell caused one's stomach to churn. Blarg, a Xianling sect disciple, vomited at the smell. Zhou Xian's face lost all color. Only until then did he finally realize why the apothecary added that one sentence. Even for him, a self-praised experienced and knowledgeable person, vomit was at the back of his throat when he saw the sight. The other disciple's face turned green as well, and it was evident that he was on the verge of puking from disgust. Even Lin Long's face turned white. Among all of them, only Yi Qingtang's expression was the same as usual as she took a calm look at the tragic hell-looking place. "We were worried that we would spoil the clues, so we have never touched the things here," the apothecary said softly after seeing everyone's expression. After Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was washed in blood in a night, they did not even dare to move anything in the village and only waited for the Xianling sect to send people over to investigate. Thus, they did not touch anything in the village, and the place remained the way it was initially. Moreover, they had already used some powder which could prevent the corpses from decomposing rapidly, though the fact that they had decomposed could not be covered, and the powder was only able to stall for time. Zhou Xian faked a calm front and nodded, but the tightly frowned brows revealed his emotions at that instant. "Do all these skulls belong to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village?" "Yes." The apothecary nodded and raised a hand, pointing to the skull at the top of the mountain of skulls. "That skull belongs to our village master, Wu Chengzi. In the layer below it, those skulls belong to the wife of the village master and the 3 young village masters." Zhou Xian did not want to look at those frightening skulls anymore, but it was not convenient for him to show it. After all, these still required to be investigated. Suddenly, Zhou Xian looked another way and at Yi Qingtang, whose expression was the same as usual. Chapter 213, Junior Sister Yi. Zhou Xian suddenly called Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes slightly. Zhou Xian's face was pale as he was disgusted by the skulls. Yi Qingtang's mouth tilted. "Junior Sister Yi, this is your first time attending a sect mission. I will not risk your life for some dangerous tasks, but you need some training. The skulls here may contain some clues of the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Thus, you must check through every single skull here carefully to look for clues," Zhou Xian said in a noble way. It seemed that he really picked the best task for Yi Qingtang wholeheartedly. The 2 disciples sneered as Zhou Xian finished his words. Frankly speaking, if they took a few more looks at the rotten skulls, they would be vomiting. They would never touch the skull for investigation. Furthermore, the skulls had decayed to the extent that there were little or no clues left at all. They definitely did not want to waste energy on this kind of task. However, they were delighted if Yi Qingtang could take the task. Lin Long frowned upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Yi Qingtang clearly noticed what a hypocrite Zhou Xian was. Surprisingly, she did not reject Zhou Xian's proposal. She shrugged her shoulder and agreed. Okay. No one expected that Yi Qingtang would agree with that so easily. Even an adult male might not be able to face the rotten skull tower without fear. How could a young lady be capable of such a feat? However, Yi Qingtang agreed without hesitation. Zhou Xian was expecting Yi Qingtang to reject his proposal. His mouth twitched. But when he remembered that Yi Qingtang would spend her time with the rotten skulls, he felt more relieved. Thank you for the trouble, junior sister Yi. Zhou Xian faked a smile and looked towards the apothecary. There are only the skulls of the 300 people from the Spirit Condensation Mountain village here. Where are their bodies? The corpses are scattered around the village. I will show you the way. The apothecary answered. Zhou Xian lifted his eyebrows slightly and took a glance at Yi Qingtang. Okay then, he said. Junior village master, I'm afraid you have to accompany this lady here to identify these skulls, the apothecary said towards Wu Zheng. The handsome young man who remained silent nodded without any expressions. The apothecary then led Zhou Xian and the rest to other places in the village. Lin Long wanted to stay, but Yi Qingtang shook her head. Lin Long paused for a moment and followed up with Zhou Xian. Yi Qingtang chuckled as Zhou Xian and the rest left. How could she not know Zhou Xian's intentions? However, Zhou Xian wanted to scare her with these rotten skulls, but he would be disappointed soon. What kind of bloody scene had she not witnessed before in the tortures of her previous life? She even spent days under rotten corpses to hide from the killings. How could she be scared of a few hundred skulls? Such a joke. Yi Qingtang withdrew her sight. She did not bother about Zhou Xian's little trick. She only cared about the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. In her previous life, the tragedy remained unsolved after 200 years, and this was Yi Qingtang's first sect mission. It would not be good news for a new disciple to fail their first mission. Chapter 214. Though the skulls were sprinkled with powder that delayed the decaying process, the degree of decaying of the flesh was still very obvious. Furthermore, the skulls were exposed in the open yard, and the crows that were attracted by the decaying smell pecked the skulls. Among the flesh, pus that came from the decaying matter had covered the entire skulls, making them look extremely disgusting. However, Yi Qingtang seemed to not notice the disgusting scene. She walked to the skull tower directly and took down the top skull. The moment the skull was removed, the whole skull tower seemed to experience severe vibrations. The 300 skulls rolled down and fell beside Yi Qingtang's feet. Yi Qingtang was surrounded by the hundreds of rotten skulls within a second. Wu Zheng, who remained silent throughout, shivered slightly. The horrifying scene was hard to look steadily at. However, when Wu Zheng looked up, he was shocked by the young lady who seemed to be standing in a scene of carnage. The young lady stood among the flesh with the sunlight shining on her. There was no trace of fear on her delicate face. Her eyes were lowered to stare at the rotten skull in her hands. When the sunlight reached her long eyelashes, she appeared so mysterious. She seemed to be smiling with her lips tilted slightly. It seemed like she was holding a piece of jewelry instead of a disgusting skull. Yi Qingtang flipped the skull in her hand to have a view of all sides. She just allowed the pus to drop through her fingers freely. She scanned through the skull that belonged to the village master Wu Qingze. Wu Zheng had never met such a young lady before. She could still remain that calm in front of the bloody scenes. Yi Qingtang stared at the skull for quite a while. She suddenly looked up and asked Wu Zheng, who was stunned at the side. This belongs to Wu Qingze. Wu Zheng pulled himself out of astonishment and nodded slightly. Yi Qingtang did not ask further. She just took a look at the skull again and left it at the side. She then picked up another skull. Are you the adopted son of the village master? Yi Qingtang checked through the skull on her hand and asked questions that seemed to be irrelevant. Yes. Wu Zheng answered respectfully. He had to be polite and respectful in front of a sect disciple even if he was the master's own son. When did you come to the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Yi Qingtang seemed to be asking Wu Zheng, but her sight never left the skulls. Wu Zheng looked down and said, "When I was still an infant, father brought me back to the village." "Where were you when the tragedy happened?" Yi Qingtang looked towards Wu Zheng. Based on her memory from her previous life, the whole force collapsed after the tragedy. But she had never heard of people mentioning about the adopted son Wu Zheng. "Father asked me to send the young lady of the Dongyue family back. She came for a birthday celebration," Wu Zheng replied. Chapter 215, The night before the tragedy was Wu Cheng's 50-years-old birthday celebration. Many guests came, and the celebration lasted until midnight. The Dongyue family that Wu Zheng mentioned was another prestigious family nearby. There was a rumor that the two families had agreed on the marriage alliance. Yi Qingtang nodded and did not speak anymore. It seemed that all the questions before were just some random thoughts. After that, besides asking Wu Zheng about the origin of the skulls, there was no further conversation. Before the sunset, Zhou Xian and the rest who walked through the entire village were all very pale. The Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was not small, but the 300 corpses were everywhere in the village. Everywhere that they could see was covered by blood. The decaying smell made them feel like they were walking in hell. "Senior brother Zhou, the situation of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village seems to be more complicated than what we thought," a disciple who vomited many times said. Zhou Xian nodded in acknowledgement. Everything they saw today was bloody, but there were no useful clues at all. Everyone's head in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was chopped off, and the wound was very neat. There were no traces of fighting beside the corpses. "It's not revenge. If it were revenge, how could they just succumb so easily?" Zhou Xian contemplated for a while and looked towards the Lin Long, who was walking at the back. "Junior sister Lin, did you discover anything?" Lin Long shook her head. Zhou Xian frowned and felt a bit annoyed. How could they accomplish the mission without any clues? "There are no clues here." "What about the skulls?" one of the disciples said. Zhou Xian was stunned for a while and then remembered that Yi Qingtang was still in that mountain of skulls. He sneered and said, "We shall see junior sister Yes investigation results. What can she find out? I don't think she will be able to find any clues at all. I suppose that she was terrified by the skulls and did not even dare to touch the skulls. Senior brother Zhou, Yi Qingtang is just a burden. She can't do anything besides finding more troubles for us." One of the disciples twitched his mouth and did not expect any results from Yi Qingtang. "It's her first time attending a sect mission. We should tolerate her even if she creates some trouble. We are all her senior brothers and senior sisters, so we must look after her," Zhou Xian said with a strong sense of righteousness. "Senior brother Zhou, you are too kind to her. She did not feel grateful to your kindness at all," another disciple said coldly. Zhou Xian did not say much. He just waved his hand. "Don't mention it anymore. We shall go check out the situation at the yard." In the eyes of the two disciples, Zhou Xian was taking care of Yi Qingtang in all perspectives. Even if Yi Qingtang died, they would not find Zhou Xian suspicious at all. And this was what Zhou Xian wanted. The two disciples were obviously misled by Zhou Xian's fake kindness and looked down on Yi Qingtang, who only possessed a red spirit root. The group of people walked into the yard and waited to see Yi Qingtang's pale and panicking face. However, they were shocked by the view in front of them when they reached the yard. Chapter 216, There was an odd harmony in the bloody yard. The skulls that were stacked up previously were now arranged neatly in a few lines on the ground. All of them were facing the same direction without any flaws. It seemed that countless corpses were buried underground, leaving only the skulls above the ground. Those pairs of empty eyes stared straight at the direction where Zhou Xian came from. The disciple who almost vomited previously was shocked by the scene. His legs trembled and almost fell to the ground. What the hell? Yi Qingtang, who was wiping off the dirt on her hand, raised her head when she heard the scream. There seemed to be a faint smile on her delicate face, and her eyes were half closed, looking towards Zhou Xian and the rest. My fellow senior brothers and senior sisters, how's the investigation? Yi Qingtang asked in a lazy voice. Her tone seemed to be filled with slight sarcasm. Zhou Xian was stunned when he saw Yi Qingtang standing there and smiling to him. She did not seem to be affected at all. What was Yi Qingtang planning to do? Was she really a 15-year-old young lady? How could a young lady remain so calm in front of all the rotten skulls? If it was other normal people, they might be scared to death. Besides Zhou Xian, the other two disciples who were unhappy with Yi Qingtang now stared at her in horror. Zhou Xian suppressed his astonishment. He did not answer Yi Qingtang directly. Instead, he scanned through the skulls and said, "Junior Sister Yi, what is this for? The people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village died mysteriously. Even though you are still playful at your age, you should not play with the skulls of the dead people." Zhou Xian sounded like he was trying to educate Yi Qingtang. However, he was actually criticizing her for not respecting the dead. Yi Qingtang sneered. She bent down and picked up one skull. Zhou Xian sneered secretly after witnessing Yi Qingtang's move, but he did not show anything on his face. "Junior Sister Yi, that's not appropriate," he said and frowned. He then looked towards the apothecary and tried to apologize. "My junior sister is still young and does not know her manners well. Please understand." Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was a side force of the Xianling sect. Under any circumstances, disrespecting the dead was out of the manner. The apothecary was stunned, but he did not dare to blame a sect disciple. He could only shake his head. Zhou Xian then looked towards Yi Qingtang and commanded. "Junior Sister Yi, do not do such unreasonable things. We are here for an investigation, not to mess around. Put back the skulls now." Zhou Xian's command made the other two disciples dislike Yi Qingtang even more. They were surprised by Yi Qingtang's courage, but disrespecting the dead was really inappropriate. "Junior Sister Yi, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under our sect. Do not ruin our fame." One of the disciples was displeased. Yi Qingtang raised her eyebrows slightly. She smiled when she noticed how the rest were convinced by Zhou Xian. She ignored Zhou Xian's cankered face and looked straight to the skull on her hand. The degree of the decay of these 300 skulls here is very severe. However, there is no obvious wound besides normal decay. Chapter 217, Zhou Xian was stunned a little when Yi Qingtang suddenly spoke. "Junior Sister Yi, there are 300 skulls here. We need further investigation to understand the situation. You should not be so certain with your judgment. Our investigation is closely related to the 300 lives here. We should examine every single skull. You cannot just conclude with a few sentences. Take this seriously." Zhou Xian sneered. The other two disciples also showed unpleasant expressions. They would not believe that Yi Qingtang could investigate the 300 skulls within such a short period of time and reach a conclusion. Yi Qingtang smiled when the rest challenged her. Her white fingers swiped through the pus on the decayed flash. She forced open the mouth of the skull and pulled out the rotten tongue. "Senior brother Zhou, look carefully. Is there anything abnormal with the tongue?" Zhou Xian frowned as he felt disgusted by the rotten tongue. However, he did not show anything on his face and pretended to be calm. "Just a rotten tongue." Yi Qingtang chuckled and pulled out the dagger from her waist. She used the dagger to scale down a layer of mucus from the tongue and put it in front of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian almost vomited when he suddenly saw the disgusting mucus in front of his eyes. "Senior brother Zhou, the tongue is severely rotten indeed. But the residue of the Duanyuan grass is well preserved." "Duanyuan grass?" Zhou Xian's face changed. He controlled his impulse to vomit and took a closer look at the mucus. It was true that there was some dark green plant residue among the mucus. The residue was very tiny, and it was easily neglected if one did not examine carefully. Duanyuan grass is a type of poisonous grass grown at the edge of the cliff. It is not fatal, but it will cause people to faint within a short period of time. The person will lose all senses and will not wake up no matter how noisy the surroundings are. Furthermore, it does not contain any smell. If it is crushed and put into tea, people will only treat it as tea leaves. No one will be able to detect that. Yi Qingtang smiled and explained. The night when the people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village were murdered was the village master Wu Cheng's birthday celebration. They were busy for the whole night and were definitely exhausted in the morning. It's absolutely normal for them to drink some tea to quench their thirst. However, the tea that was mixed with Duanyuan grass was enough to make everyone in the village faint. I'm afraid they didn't even know how they died when they were murdered. Yi Qingtang spoke slowly. However, Zhou Xian and the rest were pale when they heard what she said. They had noticed earlier that all the victims did not fight back before they were murdered. They suspected that someone poisoned them and tested the corpses with a silver needle. But the silver needle did not turn black. They thought that their direction was wrong, as even the most basic drug could turn the silver needle black. They had never thought that the murderer would use Duanyuan grass, which did not need any extraction processes. Duanyuan grass could make people faint, but it was not poisonous. Thus, no matter how they tried, they would have never found out the conclusion by using the silver needle. Furthermore, Duanyuan grass was crushed to powder. If it entered the stomach and was mixed with the flesh, no one could find out anything. Chapter 218. The residue on the tongue was mixed with blood. How many people could notice that? Zhou Xian's face clouded up. It was funny to recall how he mocked at Yi Qingtang previously. They were looking everywhere for the whole afternoon to no avail, yet Yi Qingtang alone found out the hidden clues from such insignificant details. Burden? If she was counted as a burden, then, the rest of them could be called useless. Zhou Xian, who tried to make things difficult for Yi Qingtang, was embarrassed now. All the sarcastic things he said were punching his own face now. Junior sister Yi, you are good at finding details, Zhou Xian said and gritted his teeth. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyebrows and said, Senior brother Zhou, do you want to take the residue for further investigation? She moved the dagger with mucus closer to Zhou Xian. The foul smell immediately flew into Zhou Xian's nose. He stepped back to prevent any contact with the mucus. Junior brother Lu, what are you waiting for? Keep the things here. Zhou Xian tried to remain calm as he called one of the disciples at the side. That disciple had vomited a few times by the scenes in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. His face was as pale as a piece of paper when Zhou Xian called his name. His unpleasant face was a clear comparison with Yi Qingtang's smile. Junior brother Lu could not help but go forward and take over the dagger. His body was full of goosebumps instantly. Yi Qingtang smiled as she saw the unpleasant faces. Only some of the skulls here have Duanyuan grass residue, and some are not obvious. If you want to look closely, you need to take their tongues, junior sister Yi. Zhou Xian stopped Yi Qingtang before she finished her sentence. He could guess what she was about to say. The sect disciples here all came from prestigious families. They lived a comfortable life when they were young. Though they were requested to attend the mission, they would never use their hands to touch the filthy stuff. However, Yi Qingtang did not seem to be bothered by that at all. None of the rest wanted to scale mucus down from the dead people's mouths. They could feel the goosebumps by just imagining that. It's getting late today. We should not rush now. Tomorrow, I will ask the apothecary to find someone to do that. We need to analyze other things as well. Since we have figured out that it was all caused by Duanyuan grass, we should discuss the potential suspects who could have used the Duanyuan grass. Zhou Xian tried to speak in a normal way, but he felt constricted by Yi Qingtang's behavior and words. Yi Qingtang just shrugged her shoulder and did not say anything. "Apothecary, please lead us to the place that we will be staying at. We will figure out the murderer based on the investigation today." Zhou Xian looked towards the apothecary and said, "Yes." The apothecary replied respectfully. The apothecary and Wu Zheng then led the group to their living place. Only after the gate of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village was closed, Zhou Xian and the rest felt slightly relieved. Chapter 219. The apothecary still found a relatively nice house for Zhou Xian and the rest to stay even though the Spirit Condensation Mountain village was destroyed. He did not dare to neglect these disciples of the Xianling sect. "We will go pack our luggage now and gather at the level 1 hall later to discuss the clues we have found today." Zhou Xian acted as a leader and gave out commands. No one had any objections, and everyone returned to their respective rooms. Zhou Xian held his composure until the moment he closed his door. He quickly removed his shirt and washed his hands repeatedly with water. The corpses of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village were there for quite a long time. Though they were spread with powder, it could not slow down the speed of decay. Furthermore, the weather was not cold, and it was possible to have a plague outbreak. That was the reason why Zhou Xian did not touch any single corpse today. Where does Yi Qingtang come from? Zhou Xian finally washed off the stink on his body and then remembered Yi Qingtang's behaviors today. He intended to make things difficult for her by asking her to investigate the skulls. However, she was not scared at all and found out the only clue. Zhou Xian felt slightly embarrassed, but he was not in a rush to eliminate her now. Zhou Xian clearly remembered the revenge for Zhou Chu and the orders from senior brother Ning Luo. However, he realized the value of Yi Qingtang today. If he could make use of her to find out the truth of the tragedy in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, it would save a lot of troubles for himself. He could eliminate her afterward. Then, he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Zhou Xian was proud of himself for such brilliant plans. He sat lazily in his chair with his legs crossed. He leaned on the back of the chair, and his eyes were cunning. "Yi Qingtang, you should treasure the time you have left with and use your brain to help me complete my mission." While Zhou Xian was scheming against Yi Qingtang left her room after washing up. When she reached the hall, there were no other disciples yet. There was only one tall and handsome young man standing in the hall. Wu Zheng heard the footsteps and saw Yi Qingtang coming down. He withdrew his sight and lowered his head humbly. "Lady Yi." Wu Zheng addressed her with respect. Yi Qingtang smiled and walked downstairs. She sat on a random chair and used one of her hands to support her head and looked towards Wu Zheng. Wu Zheng was very tall and had delicate features on his face. He was not that shockingly handsome, but his face was flawless when one observed closely. "Don't be so polite, young sir. Just sit down and talk." Yi Qingtang smiled at him. Wu Zheng hesitated for a while and eventually sat down. "Since you are adopted by Wu Chengze, do you know who your real parents are?" Yi Qingtang pretended to be bored and threw out a random question. "My parents are normal hunters. They were killed while hunting. Father adopted me when I was still young back then." Wu Zheng replied. "Young sir, the village master and the junior masters died during the tragedy. I'm afraid that you will be the heir of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village in the future, right?" Yi Qingtang chuckled and asked. Chapter 220. Wu Zheng was stunned. He raised his eyes to look at Yi Qingtang, and a trace of shock appeared in the pair of clear eyes. "Lady Yi, are you suspecting that?" Yi Qingtang smiled but did not reply to Wu Zheng. Instead, she murmured to herself. "There is a cliff behind the Spirit Condensation Mountain village, and there should have Duanyuan grass. Only close people would have the chance to put the Duanyuan grass in tea after the celebration." Wu Zheng's eyes sparkled. He did not say anything and lowered his eyes. Yi Qingtang took a glimpse at Wu Zheng and smiled. Since it's not done by strangers, it must be people who are close. Young sir, did Wu Qingze mistreat anyone supporting the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village before? Wu Zheng frowned and shook his head. Father is always a kind village master. Hundreds of families nearby benefited from father. They were not requested to submit any offerings, as father treated them as family. If Lady Yi has any questions, you can ask around. Yi Qingtang nodded. Actually, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village always had a good reputation. There were no rumors about Wu Qingze mistreating the people here. Lin Long walked down slowly when they were chatting. She exchanged a glance with Yi Qingtang and sat at the side. While they were waiting for the rest, they heard a range of footsteps from the second level. One of the disciples rushed to the staircase. Senior Sister Lin. Something's wrong. Junior Brother Lu. You should go and take a look now. The disciple was panicking, and the three people were stunned slightly after hearing his words. Lin Long stood up immediately and dashed to the second floor. Yi Qingtang and Wu Zheng also followed up. They soon arrived at the room of Junior Brother Lu. Junior Brother Lu, who came back with the rest, was extremely pale. He fell by the side of the bed, and his whole body was shivering. His clothes were only half removed when he collapsed onto the ground and lost his consciousness. What happened? Zhou Xian also came over. He glanced at Junior Brother Lu, who fell onto the ground, and his face suddenly changed. I don't know as well. Just now I wanted to ask him to go downstairs, but I knocked his door for a while, and no one came. Thus, I pushed open the door. I did not expect that. He was lying on the ground when I came in, the disciple who went to call up the rest replied in fear. Zhou Xian put up an unpleasant face. Junior Brother Lu was normal just now. What happened to him within such a short period of time? Help him up first. Zhou Xian commanded. The disciple immediately helped Junior Brother Lu up to his bed, and Wu Zheng went to invite the apothecary over at the same time. What happened? The apothecary rushed over, and he appeared to be very nervous. Please help to take a look at my junior brother. Zhou Xian requested once he saw the apothecary. Sure, the apothecary nodded immediately and went forward to do a checkup for Junior Brother Lu. Chapter 221, Everyone stood at the side to wait for the apothecary. However, the apothecary's face was getting more and more unpleasant. When he lifted up Junior Brother Liu's top, he stood up in shock and stepped back. Blood plague. It's the blood plague. The apothecary voice also changed. Everyone froze when the apothecary shouted. There was a patch of red spots on Junior Brother Liu's body. The red spots were getting clearer as his body shivered. Zhou Xian immediately felt cold sweat on his face. Blood plague was an extremely fatal plague that usually broke out after a natural disaster in the affected areas. When corpses piled up and decayed, blood plague might break out. Zhou Xian was still worried about this, but he did not expect it to happen for real. The disciple who helped Junior Brother Lu was taken aback when he heard about the blood plague. He fell to the ground and started shivering. I just touched him. Senior Brother Zhou, I just touched him. The blood plague could be spread through physical contact. It spread very fast, and the whole blood system would be contaminated in a short period of time. It was very difficult to cure that. People who cultivate were more scared of the damage towards their spirit roots. At the early stage of the blood plague, the contaminated blood would corrode the spirit root. Even if the person were cured, the damaged spirit root could not be restored. The spirit root was the foundation for cultivation. If it were damaged, the cultivation road would terminate right there. Zhou Xian could hear the buzzing sound in his head. He sighed in relief that he did not touch any corpse today. If not, he would be the person lying there. Apothecary, Please help to take a look at the rest of my juniors, Zhou Xian said and took a deep breath. His eyesight landed on Yi Qingtang. They did not have much contact with the corpses today. Junior brother Lu only touched the corpse once. The closest contact he had was the dagger he took over from Yi Qingtang, the one with the pus on it. If junior brother Lu was infected by that, Yi Qingtang. There was a trace of malice appearing in Zhou Xian's eyes. He might not need to eliminate Yi Qingtang by himself. Furthermore, it would take a period of time for the blood plague to be fatal. He could ask Yi Qingtang to continue the investigation during this period of time. That would be the best ending. The apothecary did a checkup for the rest of the 3 people. There were red spots on the arms of the shocked disciple and Lin Long. Their state of infection was much lighter when compared to junior brother Lu. However, Yi Qingtang, who had the most contact with the corpses, did not have any trace of the blood plague. Zhou Xian was surprised by the results. He did not forget to go through the checkup, and luckily, there was no red spot on his body. However, among the 5 people who came, 3 were infected with the blood plague. That was not good news. Zhou Xian frowned. Yi Qingtang was a little surprised when she saw the few not-so-obvious red spots on Lin Long's arm. There was no information about the blood plague in her previous life when the tragedy of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village happened. However, why did the blood plague suddenly occur? Chapter 222 Yi Qingtang felt something suspicious as the blood plague did not occur in her previous life. She did not care about the rest, but Lin Long was also infected. Apothecary, do you have any ways to control the blood plague? Zhou Xian showed an unpleasant expression. The blood plague is not fatal yet. I don't know the way to cure it completely, but I will provide some herbal soup to delay its spread in the body. The apothecary was not very confident. It would not be so terrifying if a plague could be cured so easily. The blood plague spreads very fast. We should dispose of the corpses of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village as soon as possible to prevent others from getting infected. The apothecary suggested. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. He did not give an immediate reply. He scanned through the faces of the rest, but another thought emerged in his brain. This mission was assigned by the sect. They would be punished if they could not accomplish it. Furthermore, they bribed the warden in order to assign Yi Qingtang to this task. If they did not accomplish the mission and got exposed for the bribe, Zhou Xian would definitely be punished heavily as the leader. Additionally, if they returned to the sect now, he would lose the chance to eliminate Yi Qingtang. It was easy to explain the situation to his brother, but for Ning Luo. Zhou Xian squinted his eyes and took a breath secretly. We have not found out the murderer of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village yet. If we dispose of the corpses now, we would lose a lot of clues. Since Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under our sect, we will definitely continue the investigation. You only need to block the entire mountain village and spread the powder that can deter the plague at the borders. Warn the rest not to approach the area, and we will handle the rest. Zhou Xian looked at the apothecary and ordered. The apothecary was stunned as he did not expect that Zhou Xian was still not willing to dispose of the corpses. The blood plague might spread to innocent people anytime if they left the corpses there. Sir, do we need to inform the sect that the blood plague is spreading? Zhou Xian waved his hand to reject his suggestion. We are the sect disciples, and we are proud of our sect. Since Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under us and 300 people died in misery, we will not stop due to a little obstacle. Zhou Xian was full of justice. Though the apothecary was still worried, he did not try to convince him again. Sir, you are such a righteous disciple of the Xianling sect. I really admire you, and we will never forget your kindness. Yi Qingtang sneered as she observed how Zhou Xian's expressions changed. When did Zhou Xian's temper change? He decided to stay for investigation when he knew that he might get infected by the blood plague any time. She did not recall that Zhou Xian was such a righteous person. Zhou Xian turned his head when Yi Qingtang was staring at him. Junior sister Yi, we need to control the spread of the blood plague in junior brother Lu and rest, but we need to accomplish the sect mission as well. Thus, you will be in charge of the investigation now. I will take care of the rest, Zhou Xian said and smiled. He showed a sense of justice, but his words shocked Lin Long. Zhou Xian still asked Yi Qingtang to investigate when there was the blood plague in the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. What was he up to? Chapter 223. Even Lin Long, who always appeared to be indifferent, felt enraged towards Zhou Xian. Apparently, he tried to make things difficult on purpose. Yi Qingtang smiled at Zhou Xian, who was full of cunning. She was still contemplating why Zhou Xian became so kind, but actually, he left this inhumane task for her. If she accomplished the task, Zhou Xian would definitely take the credit from her. If she failed, he would not have to touch the corpses and did not have the chance to get infected. He would not lose anything. He would gain all the credits eventually and suppress the rest with the sect's honor. The few people who were infected with the blood plague might not be able to leave this place anymore. Such a perfect plan. Zhou Xian squinted his eyes as he did not receive any reaction from Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Yi, we had never looked down on you as a new disciple during this mission. And we did not create any troubles for you deliberately just because you possess the red spirit root. We took care for you the whole time, and now that junior sister Lin and the rest are infected with the blood plague, are you willing to let them investigate when they are ill? As a human being, you need to learn how to be gracious. Do not be so selfish. The beautiful words Zhou Xian said to Yi Qingtang sounded so pleasant. Yi Qingtang's eyes darkened. However, she laughed after a short while. She glanced at Zhou Xian's hypocritic face. Senior brother Zhou is correct. I will be in charge of the investigation. Rest assured. Yi Qingtang replied. It was out of everyone's expectation that Yi Qingtang compromised. Lin Long frowned and wanted to pull Yi Qingtang to stop her decision. She withdrew her hand when she realized that she could not touch Yi Qingtang when she was infected with the blood plague. I shall say thank you first then. Zhou Xian smiled and gave a few orders to the apothecary before he left. The shocked disciple immediately asked the apothecary to check his situation. Lin Long threw a glance towards Yi Qingtang and left the room. Yi Qingtang followed. You should not have agreed to that, Lin Long said and frowned to Yi Qingtang when they were outside the room. Yi Qingtang's eyes softened. We have to accomplish the mission. Senior sister Lin, you just rest for these few days, and I will find out the truth. Lin Long shook her head and sighed. I saw the competition between you and Zhou Chu the other day. Zhou Chu was injured mysteriously afterward, but I knew it was because of you. Zhou Xian is not a generous person, and he will not let go so easily. You are lucky that you are not infected with the blood plague. You are killing yourself if you go back to the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. Lin Long did not know why she said those words to Yi Qingtang, but she always felt that Yi Qingtang was different from the rest. Though they did not talk much in the past, she took extra care for her. Yi Qingtang lowered her eyes to hide the smile she had. Senior sister Lin is still a cold outside but warm inside person as in the previous life. Senior sister Lin, you don't need to worry for me. I will take care of myself. Yi Qingtang then took out a bottle of elixir and handed it over to Lin Long. The elixir can't cure the blood plague, but it can nourish the breath and blood in your body. You should keep it for now. The Si family master asked Si Bai to give her the elixirs for emergency purposes when she left the Lin town. Lin Long took over the elixirs and sighed softly. Thank you, if you insist. Then, be more cautious. Sure. Yi Qingtang smiled and replied, but she promised to herself that she would not allow Lin Long to suffer from the blood plague. Chapter 224. Yi Qingtang sent Lin Long back to her room. Her brain was filled with thoughts. She did not return to her room and left the place. When Yi Qingtang just stepped out of the pavilion house, Wu Zheng appeared at the entrance of the pavilion house. He squinted his eyes as he witnessed Yi Qingtang walking towards the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. There was a complex expression in his eyes. The sky darkened as Yi Qingtang stepped into the bloody Spirit Condensation Mountain Village alone. At dusk, the blood stains seemed to be shadowed and were more gloomy. In the front yard, crows were landing on the rotten skulls and pecking the flesh. Yi Qingtang's arrival shocked the crows. They chirped and flew away, creating sparkling shadows on the blood stains. The little lightning dragon was disturbed by the sound and stretched out its head. Yi Qingtang gently touched its head and scanned through the gloomy place. A plague might be terrifying for the rest, but it was nothing to her. With the heart of the demon god in her, she was not scared of any filthy and evil things. She would not get infected or hurt by any plague or poison. This might be the greatest gift for Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang only saw the skulls in the front yard during the day. When she walked down the street towards the interior part of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, she then witnessed how crazy the bloodshed was. The once beautiful mountain village was destroyed by the bloodshed. Corpses could be seen everywhere lying on the ground. There were corpses on the ground with every few steps she took. It seemed to be hell under the dusk. Just as Zhou Xian and the rest discovered, there were no traces of struggling on the corpses. All the corpses lied on the ground flat. It was obvious that they did not die in horror or fear. There was one point that made Yi Qingtang feel peculiar. The murderer seemed to have a weird preference. Besides chopping off all the heads, he splashed the endless blood in the entire mountain village. Every inch of the stone floor was splashed with blood. The whole mountain village was red in color now. Yi Qingtang walked through the hell-like mountain village expressionlessly and scanned through every single corpse. However, she did not notice that there was a pair of eyes in the dark gazing at her secretly. Yi Qingtang wandered around in the mountain village for quite a long time and checked through all the corners. Though the blood was everywhere, there was no single drop of blood at the front and back gates of the mountain village. There was only overflowed blood through the gaps of the gate that exposed the bloodshed in the mountain village. 300 lives were taken here. When night came, the wind howled as the evil spirit screamed beside the ears. Yi Qingtang took a few rounds before stopping beside a young corpse. The corpses did not look old. It belonged to a 4 or 5-year-old child. According to the information written in the files, it was possible that this was Wu Qing's eldest son's child. The cold body lied flat on the stone ground. Yi Qingtang stretched her hands slowly and lifted the child's corpse. She walked to the room at the side and placed the child on the soft mattress. Chapter 225. There were a few toys in the room. Yi Qingtang took a glance at the toys and pinched the child's decayed hand. There was something that sparkled across her eyes, and she then turned to leave the place. When Yi Qingtang just walked out of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, she suddenly noticed Wu Zheng standing outside the gate. She had no idea when he came, but he was holding a torch. His handsome face was visible due to the flame. "Young sir." Yi Qingtang raised her brows slightly and stared at Wu Zheng in surprise. Wu Zheng stepped forward and handed over a napkin to her. His eyesight also landed on Yi Qingtang's hand that was stained by blood. "Lady Yi, the blood plague is spreading. You should wipe your hands." Yi Qingtang took over the napkin and cleaned her hands. "Are you not afraid of the blood plague? Why did you still come near to the place?" Yi Qingtang smiled and asked. Wu Zheng shook his head. He looked towards the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village under the moonlight. "I would be eaten by the wild beasts in the mountain if father did not save me. No matter how he is now, he is still my father. I was adopted and raised in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. How can I erase the gratitude?" Yi Qingtang smiled. She felt curious when she saw his expressionless face. She did suspect Wu Zheng, as he would benefit from the tragedy the most. However, she could not see any greed or ambition in the young man's eyes. Either Wu Zheng was really innocent or he hid his intentions very well. You really value the gratitude, I see. Are you free tonight? Yi Qingtang asked. Do you have any orders? Wu Zheng replied. Yi Qingtang smiled. Nothing important. Even though I suspected that there was Duanyuan grass on the cliff at the back of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village, I have not seen that with my own eyes, so I can't confirm that. If you are free, follow me to take a look. Sure. Wu Zheng did not hesitate at all. I shall lead the way. Wu Zheng walked to the front. Wu Zheng did not put up any guard. Yi Qingtang smiled and followed up. Under the moonlight, the two shadows walked towards the cliff at the back of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. The sky was completely dark. The moonlight shone on the insignificant flowers at the side of the cliff. The green grass was swinging in the wind, and the wind howled under the cliff. Yi Qingtang stood at the side of the cliff and scanned through the views at the bottom of the cliff. She was soon attracted by a huge stone. On top of the huge stone, there was a small broken stone tablet. The stone tablet seemed to be there for quite a long time and was exposed to rain and wind. The words on the tablet were rubbed off. Wu Zheng was only a few steps behind Yi Qingtang. She was standing at the edge of the cliff. A light push would make her fall into the cliff. Wu Zheng squinted his eyes, and his face was seen under the moonlight and the flame. The innocent and pure face was now replaced by an expression of malice. He lifted his feet slowly and stepped on the soft grass, walking towards Yi Qingtang step by step. His footstep was so light that it could be covered by the sound of the wind, but that little sound was still captured by Yi Qingtang. There was a shade of light sparkling through her eyes. She pretended to not notice anything and continued looking at the bottom of the cliff. Chapter 226 The night breeze which had a faint grass smell blew into the cliff. Wu Zheng stood behind Yi Qingtang silently. His narrowed eyes reflected the image of the tiny girl under the moonlight. She was so thin and tiny. Standing at a dangerous spot, she seemed as if she would fall into the deep abyss with just a light push. Wu Zheng raised his hands slowly and quietly stretched out towards Yi Qingtang's back. Right when his fingers touched Yi Qingtang's clothes, he suddenly closed his fingers and violently pulled Yi Qingtang by her clothes backward. Lord Yi, the wind is strong at night. This place is too dangerous, said Wu Zheng after pulling Yi Qingtang a few steps back. Yi Qingtang looked at the good-looking young man before her, and a strange expression appeared in her eyes for a moment. But very quickly, she returned to her normal state and smiled. Thank you. I saw a cracked stone tablet at the bottom of the cliff. Is there someone buried there? Wu Zheng's eyes dilated a little, but when he looked up, his eyes returned to their original calmness. Foster father had once said that Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was called Juling because this place is rich in spirit energy and full of vitality. It is rumored that thousands of years ago, a demon wreaked havoc and was eliminated by a few mighty figures. Its corpse was then buried in this mountain so it would never be able to escape, as the spirits would suppress its soul. That stone tablet was left behind by the mighty figures who slayed the demon thousands of years ago, though there are many cracks on it now, and the words on it cannot be seen clearly. A demon wreaked havoc. Yi Qingtang looked down and glanced at the broken tablet. Although most of the inscriptions had faded due to the harsh weather, the image of a beast could still be faintly seen on the broken part. However, the cracks were severe, and one could not tell what beast that was exactly. It is already dark. Lord Yi, you should return, Wu Zheng suddenly said. Yi Qingtang smiled and nodded without saying anything and then followed Wu Zheng out of the cliff. After Yi Qingtang and Wu Zheng left, a pair of ghastly eyes suddenly opened in a hidden cave near the cliff. Wu Zheng left after walking Yi Qingtang back to the pavilion. When Yi Qingtang climbed to the second floor, she happened to meet the apothecary, who was going down. Upon seeing Yi Qingtang, the apothecary immediately lowered his head respectfully. Lord Yi. Yi Qingtang looked at the basin of water in his hands and smiled. I'll have to trouble you to take care of my senior brothers and senior sister. Thank you. Don't mention it. They were infected with the blood plague because of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and it is only right of me to take care of them. How can this be called troubling me? Lord Yi, you are too polite, the apothecary said humbly. Yi Qingtang smiled and took a glance at the apothecary's hands from the corner of her eyes. A smile suddenly appeared in her eyes, and she turned around and walked up without saying anything further. The apothecary carried the basin of water down the stairs. After pouring the water outside the door, he turned around to look at the empty pavilion. Then, the hunchbacked man slowly walked along the roads and entered a small, plain-looking house. In the house, Wu Zheng was sitting at a table without any emotions. His head was hung low, seeming to be in deep thought. When he heard the door opened, he looked up slightly and then looked down again after seeing that it was the apothecary. The apothecary wiped his hands with his back facing Wu Zheng. For a moment, the room was unusually silent. However, after a moment of silence, the apothecary suddenly asked, "What has Lord Yi been busy with at night?" Chapter 227, Wu Zheng looked down and spoke a while later. She went to look at the situation in the mountain village and went to the back of the mountain afterward. Back of the mountain? The apothecary stopped whatever he was doing and turned around immediately. His eyes, which seemed to have been through the vicissitudes of life, sharpened. The night is misty, and the back of the mountain is all steep slopes and cliffs. Lord Yi is young and should be more careful. You must pay attention and not let her be injured. Wu Zheng narrowed her eyes and did not reply. The apothecary wiped clean his hands and looked at Wu Zheng's side profile. The expression in the apothecary's eyes changed for a moment as he casually sat down at a side and took a sip of tea. Perhaps, I was overly worried. Lord Yi is a sect disciple and is obviously different from us. With her skills, she would not be injured. Why would a noble sect disciple need us, ordinary people, to worry for them? Rather, it is us who would become their burdens in times of danger. A rather husky voice with unclear meanings traveled into Wu Zheng's ears. The moment Wu Zheng heard the word burdens, his fists on the table were suddenly clenched, and he lowered his head even further. Lord Yi saw the inscription on the tablet at the cliff. The apothecary's eyes changed and turned hazy for a moment. Oh. Did she say anything? Wu Zheng replied. That tablet had already been so broken, and the sky is dark. How can she see anything? The apothecary leaned back in his chair and narrowed his eyes. After a sigh, he said bafflingly, "Yeah, it is already dark. Even if something happens, no one would know." Wu Zheng's shoulders stiffened while the apothecary stood up and walked out straight. In the pavilion, Yi Qingtang knocked on Lin Long's door after washing up a little. Lin Long was a little surprised to see Yi Qingtang but let her in without saying anything. "How do you feel, senior sister Lin?" Yi Qingtang asked after entering the room. Lin Long looked at the glaring blood spots on her arm and said calmly, "Nothing unusual." Yi Qingtang slowly sighed in relief. She did not know much about this blood plague. "Senior sister Lin, why were you appointed here with Zhou Xian?" Yi Qingtang asked with a faked casual tone. She already had a guess in her heart, but there was a fatal loophole. Lin Long did not know why Yi Qingtang suddenly asked of this but replied regardless. "This mission was instigated by Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian and I did our mission at the same time previously, and according to the calculation, there will only be new sect missions appointed at least half a month later." However, Zhou Xian suddenly requested to accept a sect mission in advance. Thus, this Spirit Condensation Mountain Village mission was appointed to us. Sect missions were appointed at regular time intervals. Zhou Xian accepted a new mission half a month in advance, and subsequently, Lin Long, who completed the previous mission the same time as him, was dragged into this new mission as well. The moment Lin Long finished her sentence, Yi Qingtang suddenly stood up, and a cold light flashed across her eyes. She finally found the reason for the loophole in her guess. If it was really what she guessed, all the Xianling sect disciples in this mission would definitely die without a doubt. But in her previous life, it was already years after the current year when she entered the sect. And at that time, regardless of Zhou Xian or Lin Long, both were still well and alive in the sect. Yi Qingtang could not understand that, but now everything flowed. Chapter 228. Because of Yi Qingtang's appearance, Zhou Chu was beaten up, and this resulted in Zhou Xian's plan for revenge. And because Zhou Xian wanted to seek revenge on Yi Qingtang, he forcefully brought forward his mission to the time when Yi Qingtang had to accept her first sect mission so as to pull Yi Qingtang into his mission team. If she estimated using the course of events in her previous life, the people who came to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village today would not be Lin Long and Zhou Xian. Thus, Yi Qingtang was able to see them in the sect in her previous life. Along with the change that Yi Qingtang brought about, the wheel of fate started to deviate a little. After understanding this point, Yi Qingtang's mind cleared up. However, she did not even savor this feeling as she immediately walked towards Lin Long and pulled her wrist. Lin Long's face turned pale, and afraid that Yi Qingtang would be infected with the blood plague from touching her, she quickly kept her hands back. However, Senior Sister Lin, everything about Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is a trap. We must leave this place immediately. There was a serious and stern expression on Yi Qingtang's face. Lin Long was shocked. Looking at the solemn Yi Qingtang, Lin Long felt that Yi Qingtang must have discovered a serious clue. Junior Sister Yi, what do you mean by that? There's no time to explain. Senior Sister Lin, leave with me, now. The puzzle in Yi Qingtang's mind was resolved with Lin Long's words, but at that very instant, she sensed the intensity of danger here. If they continued staying on, their lives would be in great danger. Lin Long did not know what Yi Qingtang found, but from her instincts, she had an unknowing trust towards this young junior sister. Without saying anything much, she packed her luggage, followed Yi Qingtang out of the room, and headed to the first floor directly. However, Zhou Xian, who just left the room in search of food, happened to see the two anxious people at the staircase. When Zhou Xian saw Yi Qingtang holding onto Lin Long's wrist, a smile flashed across his eyes. Lin Long was already infected with the blood plague, and Yi Qingtang actually dared to touch Lin Long regardless of the danger. She must really find that her life was too long. What are you two so hurriedly off to do? Zhou Xian raised a brow, blocking the entrance to the stairs and looking at Yi Qingtang with a perverse expression. Yi Qingtang looked at Zhou Xian coldly. She had no thoughts of wasting time with this fool at this time. Senior brother Zhou, please move aside, Yi Qingtang said coldly. Zhou Xian, however, did not have any intention of moving away as he said without fear, "Is this the tone you should have when talking to a senior brother?" Yi Qingtang, you, Zhou Xian still wanted to say something, but Yi Qingtang simply did not have the energy to bother with it. She immediately released her hand which held Lin Long and used it to slap Zhou Xian. In just a moment's time, Zhou Xian had goosebumps all over. Lin Long was infected with the blood plague, and Yi Qingtang actually dared to use the hand which touched Lin Long to hit him. Zhou Xian's face changed drastically as he frantically searched for something on his body while Yi Qingtang used this time to pull Lin Long down the stairs. Zhou Xian took a bottle of elixir out and hurriedly poured everything into his mouth. That was an elixir which could cure all diseases. He spent a large number of Xianming points to exchange for it and was the reason why he dared to stay here. He only had this one elixir and apart from himself, he would not give anyone else. After consuming the elixir, Zhou Xian immediately recalled Yi Qingtang's rude behavior just now, and his face darkened. Then, he dashed down the stairs, wanting to settle scores with Yi Qingtang. Chapter 229, but when Zhou Xian chased to the hall on the first floor, he was taken aback. Yi Qingtang and Lin Long were still in the hall and had not left. At the entrance stood the apothecary with many citizens behind him, blocking all the exits. Zhou Xian watched the scene before him and faintly sensed that something was off. "Apothecary, you all are," Zhou Xian said hesitantly. However, that elderly in the hall had lost all previous humility at that time. He stood upright, and a frightening smile hung on his face while the citizens behind him were devoid of emotions. The initial respect and uneasiness were no longer present on the masses' faces, and a violent cold expression similar to that of a wild beast glistened in their eyes. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes. Looking at the group of people that was blocking her way, she tightened her grip on Lin Long's wrist instinctively. The apothecary's eyes were less humble as before and a few shades darker. He sized up Yi Qingtang and the rest with a blood-curdling smile. "Lords, it is so late already. Where are you all going? If there is anything to settle, how about you do it tomorrow?" The apothecary said in a rather unyielding tone. Yi Qingtang looked at the apothecary coldly, and her lips tugged up into a smile. "Village Master Wu, you should tell us the reason for bringing so many people here late at night instead." With that said, the apothecary, Lin Long, and even Zhou Xian, who was behind Yi Qingtang, were instantly shocked to the core. Village Master Wu. Wu Chengzi. What was Yi Qingtang saying? The smile on the apothecary's face vanished by that way of address. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the stunning young girl before him. "Lord Yi, what are you saying? Why don't I understand?" Yi Qingtang laughed and tilted her head a little. "Village Master Wu, I have to hand it to you for your acting skills. However, you forgot that even if you changed your face, some things would never be changed." As she spoke, her eyes fell on the apothecary's hand that fell by his side. "As an apothecary, the perlicue of your hand, however, has such a thick callus. To accumulate such a thick and old callus, one would need at least 10 years of sword practice. Village Master Wu, you're really too careless." Once Yi Qingtang finished her sentence, the apothecary looked at his hands immediately, and there indeed was an old callus which did not fit his identity as an apothecary. His eyes narrowed, though there was no hint of panic on his face. He looked up and said helplessly, "Although I do not have good enough endowments, I like to practice swordplay to cultivate my character." "Lord Yi, you may have misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly and smiled. "Then, can you tell me why your grandson's body in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is so small?" He was a small village master who led a comfortable life but was only skin and bones as though he was from a poor family. He was clearly babed, but why was it that his hands are as rough as that of a servant's? The apothecary's face darkened immediately. Yi Qingtang sneered in her heart, and her eyes sharpened. "Village Master Wu, because of your personal greed, you disregarded the lives of the citizens outside Spirit Condensation Mountain Village and used the Duanyuan grass to drug them unconscious to kill them. Then, you pretended to be a person from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village and moved into the village while you all replaced their identities and continued living on. This switching the crown prince with a raccoon slinking move of yours is really cruel and merciless." Chapter 230. The apothecary's face darkened further as his lips curled into a sneer. "Lord Yi, you're overthinking. If I were really Village Master Wu, why would I need to kill the surrounding citizens? What benefit will that bring me?" Zhou Xian, who had been standing aside all this while, walked towards Yi Qingtang at this time as well. What Yi Qingtang said just now really shocked him. "Junior Sister Yi, what the hell are you saying? If you don't dare to investigate on your own, just say it. There's no need to come up with such a ridiculous excuse." The apothecary was Wu Chengzi. And he even killed all the citizens nearby and replaced them. What was the intention of reducing himself from a village master to a citizen? He would not do this unless he was crazy. Increasingly, Zhou Xian felt that Yi Qingtang was speaking carelessly and that it was only because she did not dare to investigate the plague-filled corpses. Zhou Xian walked forward and glanced at Yi Qingtang with a belittling expression. Then, he was about to say something, but Yi Qingtang gave him a cold glare before he could say anything. Zhou Xian, if you want to die, no one is stopping you. Don't show off your useless brain here. You. Zhou Xian widened his eyes unbelievably as he did not expect Yi Qingtang to speak so rudely to him. It should be known that while he tried making things difficult for Yi Qingtang throughout the journey, she was still very obedient. Why is she acting like a madwoman today? Yi Qingtang, do you know what rubbish are you spouting? You said he is Wu Qingzi. Why? Is Wu Qingzi crazy or dumb? He gave up his position as a village master to become an ordinary citizen. And he even made a scene of such scale. I think you're the one who is really crazy. Zhou Xian retorted. Yi Qingtang could not be bothered to look at Zhou Xian as she fixed her eyes on the sullen apothecary with a cold smirk. Yeah. He was a village master, and why would he drag his family into pretending as citizens? And then purposely lead us here to investigate the case. I am asking you a question. Why are you asking me back one? Zhou Xian scoffed. Yi Qingtang chuckled as she glanced across the faces of the other somber citizens. Thousands of years ago, there were many sects vying for supremacy, but one sect stood above all. It was the Blood Moon sect. The Blood Moon sect topped the world with its black magic, consuming humans' blood and essence and eating humans' flesh to nourish themselves. They mastered the extreme evil cultivation techniques and raised countless of demonic creatures, causing great chaos. For peace and stability, all the sects and many mighty figures combined forces to exterminate the Blood Moon sect. They did everything to wipe out the Blood Moon sect from the world completely. To prevent the Blood Moon sect from resurrecting, sects and mighty figures joined hands to suppress the soul of the Blood Moon sect's backbones in various areas so that it would never appear in the world again. Then, they incised inscriptions of a sealed soul on the tablet as a mean of suppression. Yi Qingtang spoke clearly, neither fast nor slow, as she recounted the history that had been buried for thousands of years. Zhou Xian frowned and completely did not understand why Yi Qingtang suddenly mentioned the Blood Moon sect, which had been exterminated long ago. However, he did not notice that as Yi Qingtang spoke, the apothecary's face turned from white to black, and an intense murderous look filled his eyes. Yi Qingtang slowly looked up and straight at the apothecary, whose eyes spelled death. At the cliff behind Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, the tablet used to suppress the evil spirit had already broken. The soul which had been sealed for thousands of years required large amounts of essence and blood to make up for its loss. Chapter 231. However, the essence and blood that ordinary people could provide were very limited. If that evil spirit wanted to resurrect quickly, absorbing the essence and blood from cultivators would be the best. Yi Qingtang looked at the apothecary smilingly as she raised her right hand and pointed at her own chest. Her smile was so charming, but it never reached her eyes. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had attached itself to the Xianling sect for years. If there was a tragic massacre in the mountain village, Xianling sect would definitely send disciples out here to personally investigate. The essence and blood of cultivators like us would be more nourishing than those 300 dead souls. Isn't that right, Village Master Wu? The apothecary narrowed his eyes and did not respond. Zhou Xian faintly sensed a strange atmosphere, and uneasiness crept into him, though he faked a calm front. Junior Sister Yi, the Blood Moon sect has been exterminated for years. Your guess is not enough. However, before Zhou Xian could finish his sentence, the apothecary, who had remained silent all the while, suddenly let out a laugh. I am really surprised there's such an intelligent outer sect disciple in Xianling sect. His laughter was strong and powerful and completely not that of a washed-up old man. The apothecary's hunched back slowly straightened right before Zhou Xian's shocked eyes. I thought you were different since before. It seems, now, that you're indeed different. You were not shocked by the blood plague and even headed to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village to investigate alone. Yi Qingtang, you're really courageous. The apothecary did not intend to hide any further at that point as he suddenly raised a hand and tore away the human skin mask on his face. Under the disguise, it was really the face of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village's village master, Wu Qingze. With just a look, Zhou Xian's mind buzzed constantly as though it exploded. Never would he have expected that whatever crazy things that Yi Qingtang said would actually be true. Wu Qingze was not dead, and the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village people were not dead as well. They only killed the citizens residing nearby Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, moved their corpses into Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and pretended to be them. Then, they used the excuse of the extermination of a family to attract Xianling sect disciples here. The truth pounded on Zhou Xian's mind like huge rocks. He simply could not imagine how twisted and insane everything was, and even more so, he could not believe that Yi Qingtang saw through everything in just one day. You shouldn't praise me. Your scheme is very shrewd. The extremely bloody scene in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village really had a terrifying effect. At least, my senior brothers were shocked by the tragedy you constructed and did not even intend to investigate in detail. Yi Qingtang shrugged slightly. The unusually tragic scene in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had already attracted her attention for a long time. According to her previous reasoning, over 300 people all died in the hands of a familiar person. If it was done by someone they knew, the person would definitely be extremely cautious. Why would the person set the crime scene to be so bloody? All of that was just a deceptive ploy. First, it could cover up the traces of blood when moving the corpses, and second, it was to affect the judgment of others. In such a bloody hell-looking place, how many would be able to check each corpse in detail with a calm heart? Furthermore, with the appearance of the blood plague, you all would have burnt the corpses away if not for senior brother Zhou's evil designs. When all the corpses were burnt, the truth would never be uncovered. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes slightly and fixed them on Wu Qingze after looking past the guilty Zhou Xian. Chapter 232. The citizens residing nearby Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had always treated Spirit Condensation Mountain Village as their protection. Never would they have thought that there would be bits of Duanyuan grass mixed in the tea and snacks that the village sent over as part of the village master's birthday celebration. What the innocent people consumed out of trust was poison that sent them to the netherworld. The moment they were unconscious, they were doomed to die. People said Village Master Wu is kind and compassionate, but unexpectedly, you also have a cruel and evil side to you. Yi Qingtang scoffed. Wu Qingze stared at Yi Qingtang. At that instant, he had no other inhibitions anymore as he lifted his chin slightly and scoffed. Cruel and evil? If not for my Spirit Condensation Mountain Village's protection, they would have died long ago. I raised them for so many years, and so what if I demanded some returns? Wu Qingze did not feel that his actions were cruel at all. He laughed. Yi Qingtang, you're very smart. But too bad, no matter how smart you are, there's no use. Most of your senior brothers are infected with the blood plague already. I planted that blood plague on those bodies a long time ago. The moment you all stepped into Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, it was destined that you all will be unable to leave. The moment Wu Qingze finished his sentence, he suddenly raised a hand, and the group of people behind him drew out their weapons and pointed them straight at Yi Qingtang and the rest. At this moment, Zhou Xian truly realized how dangerous the situation he was in. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had already laid a trap from the start and planned to use the tragic extermination of the village to lead them over here and offer them to that evil spirit which escaped the suppression. Yi Qingtang, why did you not say earlier since you realized it long ago? Do you want to kill us? Zhou Xian glared furiously at Yi Qingtang, who clearly detected something strange long before then. Yi Qingtang looked at Zhou Xian coldly and sneered in her heart. Even if she said it, would Zhou Xian believe her? Senior Sister Lin, follow me closely. Yi Qingtang simply could not be bothered with Zhou Xian, the good-for-nothing. The only person she wanted to protect was Lin Long. Lin Long looked at Yi Qingtang, who was fending her from the front, with a complicated expression. She did not think that the situation would be this dangerous and, even more so, did not expect that. Yi Qingtang, who had seen through everything, actually did not flee for her life alone but returned to escape together with her instead. Clearly, Yi Qingtang had the chance to leave by herself. Lin Long took a deep breath and grasped the sword on her waist firmly. "Thank you, junior sister Yi." Yi Qingtang's lips tugged upwards into a smile and did not say anything. With heightened vigilance, she fixed her eyes on Wu Qingze and the rest who blocked the entrance and searched for a slim chance for survival. And right when a battle was about to ensue, a miserable cry was suddenly heard from the second floor of the pavilion. Zhou Xian was alarmed when he heard that sound. That was junior brother Liu's voice. At the same time, a besotted smile broke out on Wu Qingze's face. He looked at Yi Qingtang and the rest evilly and uttered in almost madness, "Your senior and junior brothers have already become a part of my master. For the resurrection of my sect, all of you can dream on about leaving this place alive." With that said, Wu Qingze led the masses behind him and charged towards Yi Qingtang, Lin Long, and Zhou Xian. A huge battle with a great disparity in numbers between the two parties broke out there and then. In a moment's time, the entire hall of the pavilion was in chaos. Yi Qingtang drew out the sword on her waist and slashed at the oncoming enemies. Standing back to back, she and Lin Long fought against the army of people which swarmed towards them. Chapter 233, Zhou Xian and Lin Long's skills were good and were also above average in the outer sect. However, they did not dare to be careless at that moment. Countering a siege of over 300 people with only 3 people was not a joke. Even they were already breaking out in a cold sweat. Moreover, there seemed to be some frightening evil spirit hidden in the second level. If the evil spirit joined the battle, they would definitely not be able to escape. Lin Long pushed the enemies back while trying to search for an exit at the same time. But what surprised her was Yi Qingtang's skills were actually not below hers at all. Yi Qingtang's attack was sharp, and although her force was not as fierce as that of Lin Long and Zhou Xian, her moves were fatal. Every attack was accurately aimed and pierced at the enemy's vital points. Her attacks definitely killed the enemy in just one move without leaving them any room for struggle. Based on Yi Qingtang's attack, she completely did not seem like a disciple who just entered the sect. Her sharp moves were as though they were refined from countless battles and were frighteningly murderous. Even Lin Long was shocked by Yi Qingtang's violence at that instant. She never knew that there would be someone whose every move was so fatal and who did not even have the slightest hesitation when killing the enemy. Yi Qingtang did not notice that her moves shocked Lin Long as she merely looked at the onslaught of enemy coldly without any warmth in her eyes. Too slow, really too slow. These people from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village are simply a bunch of useless people. Yi Qingtang cast a cold glance at the few people who sprung on her and suddenly gave a flying kick. The same time when all of them was sent flying away, she lifted her hand and released 3 arrows from her hidden blade which shot right at the throats of the 3 people such that they immediately died when they fell onto the ground. With over 300 people besieging them, Yi Qingtang and the rest actually had not fallen to a disadvantage yet. Witnessing such a scene, Wu Qingze, who was brimming with confidence, felt his expression darken. What is that Yi Qingtang's background? She is clearly the youngest, but why are her attacks so ruthless? Wu Qingze's gaze fell on Yi Qingtang. While Lin Long and Zhou Xian's moves were stable, they simply could not be compared to Yi Qingtang in terms of brutality. Yi Qingtang, who was involved in a fierce battle, was not like a human at all. She was more like a devil out to claim lives. There was no hesitation when she killed, and every move she made was lethal. Wu Qingze narrowed his eyes. From what he saw, the number of people who died in Yi Qingtang's hands was actually way more than the number of people killed by Lin Long and Zhou Xian combined. Just as Wu Qingze was absorbed in his thoughts, another shrill cry was suddenly heard from the second floor. An enormous black shadow slowly appeared on the stairs, and an intense rotting smell filled the entire pavilion thereafter. That was a monster that could not be called human, with rotted flesh stuck all over its body. As it walked down the stairs, the rotted flesh fell beside his feet one by one. In the hands of the monster was a Xianling sect disciple, whose face was a pale white and chest had a hole. The monster was holding on to a beating heart in its hands, and fresh, warm blood was dripping down from its fingers to the stairs. The moment Wu Qingze saw that monster, an almost infatuated admiration filled his eyes. He religiously knelt on the floor in the middle of the battlefield and said loudly, "Welcome, Master." Chapter 234. The huge monster let out a low growl and slowly opened its mouth, revealing a crooked row of teeth that was as sharp as that of a beast's. It raised the hand which held the heart as its scarlet eyes glanced across the dead Xianling sect disciple. Suddenly, it widened its blood-soaked mouth, ripping the fresh heart into pieces and swallowing it down. Blood spurted out and spattered all over the decomposed flesh on its body. It applied force in the hand which held the disciple, and its 5 fingers pierced the disciple's flesh, penetrating through his body which was still warm. In the blink of an eye, the disciple's flesh shriveled rapidly at a visible speed, and his body turned into a horrifying dried corpse. After swallowing the heart and absorbing the essence, there was a tiny change to the monster's body. The rotting flesh all over its body dropped to its feet in chunks, and its blood-stained hands were gradually covered by new flesh. Zhou Xian stared at the monster which suddenly appeared and trembled in fear uncontrollably. What exactly is this? What kind of scary monster did Spirit Condensation Mountain Village revive? At that instant, Zhou Xian clearly felt a sense of fear creeping from the bottom of his heart. What is that? Lin Long's eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the monster that was similar to a decomposed body. That thing was way beyond her knowledge. It is an evil spirit. After kicking the oncoming enemies away, Yi Qingtang glanced across at the evil spirit which was in the process of resurrection. The evil spirit buried under Juling Mountain was originally a member of the Blood Moon sect. The evil cultivation technique which they cultivated allowed them to offer souls to the evil god, thus obtaining almost immortality. The evil spirit had already swallowed the vitality of the over 300 people outside Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and now it absorbed the essence of 2 sect disciples consecutively. Yi Qingtang's chest tightened. Her current skills were simply not enough to fight against such a powerful evil spirit. Senior Sister Lin, we must fight our way out. Otherwise, we will end up in the same state as Senior Brother Lin, Yi Qingtang muttered. Lin Long's forehead was long covered with cold sweat. After sucking dry the essence of the disciple in its hand, the evil spirit threw the shriveled, dried corpse aside, and its scarlet eyes were already fixed on them. Lin Long's grip on the sword tightened. For the sake of survival, she could only risk her life and fight it tooth and nail. Yi Qingtang and Lin Long joined hands, and with such cooperation, they slowly moved towards the exit of the hall. However, the evil spirit had already walked down the stairs and was walking towards where they were at. As the evil spirit descended from the stairs, respect filled Wu Cheng's eyes. He knelt on the floor devotedly and bowed at the nauseating evil spirit in worship while singing praises. "Master, please accept the strength that we have offered. May this allow you to resurrect." Yi Qingtang looked at Wu Qingze from the corner of her eyes, and her eyes sharpened for a moment. She immediately gave Lin Long a look. Understanding Yi Qingtang's intention, Lin Long executed quick moves with her sword while Yi Qingtang used this time when Lin Long was holding back the masses to dart to the back of Wu Qingze. Before Wu Qingze could react, Yi Qingtang grabbed Wu Qingze by his hair, lifting him up violently, and then held her blood-stained sword against his neck. Chapter 235. Wu Qingze was still absorbed in the evil spirit's resurrection, but the infatuated expression on his face turned into a terrified one when he was suddenly in Yi Qingtang's hands. "Stop!" Yi Qingtang shouted coldly. Only then did everyone in the battle notice that Yi Qingtang actually held Wu Qingze in her hands without their knowledge. In just a moment, everyone in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village stopped their attack. Yi Qingtang watched everyone vigilantly as the sword that she held against Wu Cheng's neck remained glued on his skin. "Let's leave, senior sister Lin," Yi Qingtang said while looking straight ahead. Lin Long took a deep breath and rushed to Yi Qingtang's side. On the other hand, Zhou Xian took this opportunity to dash over and even fled out of the door without waiting for Yi Qingtang at all. Lin Long glared at Zhou Xian's back view, and disgust emerged in her eyes. "Ignore him," Yi Qingtang muttered after sensing Lin Long's disgust. She had no energy to bother with that idiot, Zhou Xian, now. "Don't let them leave. Leave me alone. I have given my everything to my master. If I can die for master, it will be my greatest honor." Suddenly, completely unafraid of Yi Qingtang's threats, Wu Qingze, who was under Yi Qingtang's control, gave a shocking declaration loudly. Everyone from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was taken aback, and before they could react, Yi Qingtang suddenly raised her hand and stabbed it right in Wu Cheng's temple fiercely. Fresh blood gushed out. Wu Qingze lost all consciousness in a moment and passed out. Yi Qingtang lifted the unconscious Wu Qingze away and scoffed while looking up at the masses. "Village Master Wu is really devout. However, if you all want him to die in front of you, you can continue," Yi Qingtang said calmly. No one knew, she was also taking a gamble. An evil spirit which just resurrected was not too agile in his movements, and if they escaped now, they still had a chance of survival. Wu Cheng's infatuation with the Blood Moon sect shocked Yi Qingtang. However, she had no choice but to take a gamble. She could only gamble with Wu Cheng's life and see whether the people in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village were as crazy as him. And this time, Yi Qingtang won the gamble. After seeing Yi Qingtang knock Wu Qingze out, everyone from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had an angry and fearful expression, but no one dared to step forward. Yi Qingtang's lips curled into a smile. Nodding at Lin Long, both of them dragged the unconscious Wu Qingze as they walked out. The people from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village did not dare to follow too closely and could only watch Yi Qingtang and Lin Long leave the hall step by step. However, watching its offerings leaving gradually, the evil spirit in the hall suddenly let out a shrill cry. The sound was extremely piercing, and as it growled, huge blood fog spat out from its mouth which filled the entire hall. Along with the air, the blood fog was sucked into everyone's lungs. In just a flash, the people who took a breath of the blood fog felt that all blood was drained instantly. Everyone's complexion turned strangely pale while their clear eyes were covered by a layer of haze. All the people from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village felt a tremor throughout their body, and in the next second, they chased out with a howl like zombies that had lost all rationality. Chapter 236, Zombies, 2. Yi Qingtang and Lin Long just left the pavilion but suddenly saw that the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village people had turned extremely crazy and were chasing after them. What's going on? Do they not care about Wu Cheng's life already? Lin Long widened her eyes as she looked at the group of people that charged towards them powerfully in the night. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes and glanced across their bodies. A stern expression flashed across her eyes. The essence of the people from Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had all been sucked by the evil spirit. Now, they are merely zombies that only know how to attack. When Yi Qingtang started speaking, she immediately sent Wu Qingze flying out with a kick. Wu Qingze was useless already. Terror filled Lin Long. While she had heard of evil spirits, she had absolutely zero understanding about such evil monsters that exist in legends. Go! Yi Qingtang did not dare to waste any time as she grabbed Lin Long's wrist and fled rapidly. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village does not pledge loyalty to evil spirits, but why? Lin Long's face had already lost all color. Yi Qingtang's eyes rapidly searched for an exit in the dark as she replied. Since it is an evil spirit, how would it understand anything about pity? The Spirit Condensation Mountain Village people are all a group of idiots. How was completely resurrecting the evil spirit such an easy thing? By pledging loyalty to an evil spirit, they will only die sooner or later. Forming an alliance with evil spirits was the most foolish thing to do in this world. Lin Long was astonished but knew that they could not afford any delays at that instant and, thus, quickly looked for an escape route with Yi Qingtang. Behind them, hundreds of zombies chased after them with loud growls, turning the silent forest into hell. Their shrilling roars were like a nightmare that quietly descended, causing the beasts in the forest to take flight in fear. Yi Qingtang pulled Lin Long to flee at top speed. Although the combat power of zombies was not strong, the evil spirit behind them would chase up once they were entangled with the zombies, and there would be no chance of escaping by then. Over there. Yi Qingtang saw a stable not far away and sprinted over with Lin Long. There were 2 horses in the stable. As though sensing danger, the horses became uneasy and neighed in fear. Just when Yi Qingtang and Lin Long was about to get on the horse, the zombies had already pounced on them. Yi Qingtang immediately waved a hand, beheading the zombies while cutting off the string that tied the horses into the stable at the same time. Go! With a shout, Yi Qingtang and Lin Long dashed out on their horses. The horses neighed and lifted their hoofs, crushing the heads of a few zombies. Blood sputtered out in the dim night. Yi Qingtang and Lin Long did not dare to stop and immediately rode out at top speed. However, just as they were about to leave the stable, Zhou Xian, who escaped 1 step earlier, suddenly flew towards them and stabbed through Lin Long's shoulder with his sword. When Lin Long fell off the horse from the pain, Zhou Xian immediately got on Lin Long's horse and fled. Zhou Xian. Death filled Yi Qingtang's eyes. When she saw Lin Long falling off from the horse, Yi Qingtang did not hesitate at all and instantly jumped down from the horse which was galloping madly, catching Lin Long, and tumbling on the ground with Lin Long in her arms. Looking at Zhou Xian's gradually disappearing back view, she flashed a murderous expression in her eyes. She lifted her arm in a flash, and an arrow from her hidden blade shot right at Zhou Xian's back. Zhou Xian's shoulder was suddenly shot, and he fell off the horse. In the dark night, the horses ran away after sensing danger, and the last chance to escape was lost just like that. How Yi Qingtang wished she could twist Zhou Xian's neck until it broke. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.